Welcome to Fiction Audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you have any recommendations for novels, comment below.
Please join my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/fictionaudiobook.
Chapter 110, Chapter 109, Stirring Intent, Fear from the Depths of the Soul. Hitsugaya Toshiro's expression said everything. He was far from calm. Even without words, anyone could tell that something within him was breaking apart. He stepped up to the prison cell, his cold aura fading slightly as he looked at the woman sitting inside the deep cell. Hinamori. His voice trembled, heavy with helplessness. Toshiro, I. Hinamori's face twisted in pain. She couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. The reality of her impending execution hung over her like a suffocating weight. Seeing this, Hitsugaya's gaze gradually hardened. But he didn't speak further, because another man stood beside him. Captain Aizen. Captain Hitsugaya. Their conversation began with casual formality. I'm deeply saddened by what has happened to Hinamori, Aizen said softly. His usual smile was gone, replaced with a tone that sounded almost sincere. I intend to appeal to the Central 46 within the month to request leniency. If two captains submit the petition together, perhaps the chances will be higher. At those words, some tension faded from Hitsugaya's face. Then, on Hinamori's behalf, thank you, Captain Aizen. Aizen blinked briefly, then shook his head. There's no need for thanks. It's what I should do. Hinamori was, after all, my lieutenant. After a brief visit, the two captains left the Senseikyū. But just before reaching the outer steps, Hitsugaya stopped, looking back toward the prison. His expression was firm, eyes filled with resolve. Captain Aizen, there's still unfinished business in the 10th Division. I'll return for now. Aizen nodded. Of course. Go ahead, Captain Hitsugaya. Using Shuinpa, Hitsugaya disappeared into the distance. Aizen watched his silhouette fade, folding his hands behind his back, a faint smile curving his lips. How intriguing. Everything is falling perfectly into place. Time passed quickly. For Shimo, the following 2 weeks were a test of patience. But eventually, they too came to an end. That morning, he received intelligence from Kyoraku, delivered in an unexpectedly roundabout way. Members of the Shiba clan had passed it to Shiba Kyoraku, who in turn handed it to him. Kyoraku, Shimo said, glancing at the letter in his hand, his tone wry. You still keep in touch with Shihoin Yoruichi? Kyoraku's face froze awkwardly. Well, you know Yoruichi's been branded an exile. As a Shiba, how could I possibly still be in contact with her? Her bluff was obvious, but her honesty was disarming. Shimo coughed lightly, pretending not to notice. Right, of course. No contact then. The envelope bore a small paw print pressed into the wax seal. Below it was written. To Kyoraku Shimo, personally. He could only sigh. So that's how you pass messages now, Kisuke, through Yoruichi's cat form. Infusing the envelope with spiritual energy, he opened it. Dear Shimo. Kurosaki Ichigo and his companions will enter Soul Society tomorrow. Let's meet soon. Urahara Kisuke. And beneath the signature, another paw print. Shimo's eyes narrowed slightly as he burned the message into ash. So, the stage is finally being set. Kyoraku eyed the ashes curiously but said nothing. She was sharp enough to know when not to ask questions. When she drifted into thought, Shimo suddenly clapped his hands. Right. I almost forgot something important. He turned toward her with a serious look. If you don't return to the Shiba estate tonight, who's going to fire the Keikaku Taiho, flower crane cannon? Surely not Kyan. He shuddered at the thought. If Kyan tried to operate it, it'd probably misfire before launching the Ryoka anywhere near Siriiti. And if Ichigo couldn't breach the barrier, Hinamori wouldn't be able to stage her prison break, meaning Shimo's check-in mission would fail entirely. Decision made, he smiled at Kyoraku. Kyoraku. We're heading back to the Shiba estate tonight. She blinked. Even she, bold as she was, turned slightly red at the sudden insistence in his tone. After informing Unohana of his temporary departure, Shimo and Kyoraku headed for the western Rakongai. For safety's sake, he added as they walked, you're sure Kyan can't handle the cannon? Kyoraku crossed her arms proudly. In all of Soul Society, no, in all of existence, I'm the only one who can fire it properly. Big Brother's genius lies elsewhere, unlike you, Shimo, who's just ridiculous in every way. Shimo chuckled. I'll take that as a compliment. He explained the situation on their way back, the Ryoka invasion, the need to open the cannon gate, and what was about to unfold. Kyoraku, ever straightforward, didn't even ask why. She just agreed. You really are the best, Kyoraku, Shimo praised. Better than Yoruichi, she teased. He paused. Let's save that debate for another day. Thanks to Urahara's prearranged coordinates, the Shiba clan had already relocated from northern to western Rakangai to match the Kaidō gate's alignment. Because of this, Kyoraku's fate had already shifted, her arm was still intact, and her family had avoided their original tragic sequence of explosions. When everything was settled, Shimo returned to Siriidii. Behind him, Kyoraku's lingering, wistful gaze followed until he disappeared beyond the horizon. Marriage talk already, way too soon, he muttered, quickening his pace. The next morning, Shimo resumed his duties, inspecting the general relief ward as usual. But as he returned to his barracks, a sharp alarm rang out. The Hell Butterfly communication network flared, followed by the echo of the 12th Division's emergency alert system. Emergency situation, a voice cried. Repeat. Emergency situation in the western outskirts, abnormal boundary readings detected from sectors 3 through 8. All divisions, prepare for engagement. Whispers spread like wildfire. Abnormal boundary readings. Could it be a Ryoka incursion? The word sent ripples of tension through the barracks. In Soul Society, this term had one meaning: illegal souls crossing the boundary between worlds. And those who did were known as Ryoka. Hearing it, Shimo smiled faintly. Finally. Yusuker. Gather the first aid unit, we're heading to the Hakutamon. White Road Gate. Understood. Within minutes, his aide Yusuker had assembled the elite 6th Mi relief unit, and they took off at full speed. Western Rakangai, Hakutamon. Kurosaki Ichigo stood before a towering figure whose height nearly reached 10 meters. No entry through the Hakutamon, kid, boomed the giant, his voice like a temple bell. Jidanbo Ikenzaka, the gatekeeper of Siriidii, hefted his twin axes. Unless you can defeat me. Ichigo grinned and drew his massive Zanpakutō. Fine by me. Let's fight. Their blades clashed like thunder. Jidanbo's strength shook the ground, but Ichigo's determination refused to yield. At last. Crash. Jidanbo's axes shattered, and his huge body was hurled backward toward the gate. Defeated, the loyal gatekeeper laughed weakly. A promise is a promise. Planting his feet, he raised the gate with a roar of effort. But as it opened, his eyes went wide with horror. On the other side stood a man in a white captain's haori, with short lavender hair and a perpetual, fox-like smile. Who is that? Ichigo asked, his voice tense. Sea captain of the 3rd Division. Ichimaru Jin, Jidanbo stammered. Jin tilted his head, eyes narrowing in amusement. Well now, that's not good, is it? He slowly drew Shinso, its blade gleaming with killing intent. But before he could strike. Clang. Steel met steel, his slash intercepted. Oh. Jin turned slightly, a flicker of surprise in his gaze. Well, well. Lieutenant Kyoraku Shimo. Fancy seeing you here. Shimo smiled pleasantly. My apologies, Captain Ichimaru. But I'd rather not give my division more work than necessary. Jin chuckled. A soft heart, as always. Shimo's smile deepened, warm, polite, yet far more unsettling than Jin's. Just doing my duty. This area is off limits, surely you understand. Jidanbo blinked. That's the 4th Division's Lieutenant, Kyoraku Shimo. Before he could finish, Ichigo exclaimed. You. Shimo met his gaze, smiling like a teacher meeting a wayward student. Well, what a coincidence, Ryoka boy. We meet again. A bead of cold sweat rolled down Ichigo's cheek. The smile, that same terrifying calm. Even now, with all his newfound strength, he felt it again. That suffocating, primal fear. A dread that clawed up from the depths of his soul. His knuckles turned white as he gripped his sword, hands trembling. And yet, Shimo only smiled wider. Sorry, everyone, he said softly. But this gate is closed. /////. Thanks for the support. Chapter 111, Chapter 110, The Correct Way to Enter the Siriidii. The moment Shimo appeared, the seed of fear buried deep within Kurosaki Ichigo's heart began to sprout again. He recalled that night, the suffocating pressure, the battle he couldn't win, and unconsciously tightened his grip on his Zanpakutō. For the first time, he realized he couldn't even summon the will to fight. Kyoraku Shimo. Shimo smiled, that same calm and unreadable smile as always, then looked past Ichigo toward the group behind him. A black cat's face twisted into a helpless grimace as she saw him. Yoruichi could only sigh at his fondness for mischief. Ichigo, let's go, said Ishida Yuryu quietly, his tone grim. He too remembered that overwhelming spiritual pressure. He had been rendered unconscious by it before even raising a hand. No battle, no resistance, just pure, crushing power. In more than 10 years of training, Yuri had never encountered a being so utterly beyond comprehension. With him guarding this place, we're not getting through, Yuri muttered. And there's also the captain of the 3rd Division beside him. Ichigo's face hardened. Without a word, he turned and began walking away. Even after his rapid growth, even after obtaining newfound strength, when facing Shimo, he still felt small. That oppressive aura, like an abyss, loomed before him once more. Watching the Ryoka retreat, Jin's grin widened. My, never thought Shimo-kun would let the Ryoka leave. He tilted his head playfully. If I reported that to head Captain Yamamoto, what do you think would happen? Shimo gave him a cold glance. Worry about yourself. I simply don't want to create more work for my division. Without another word, he walked past Jidanbo, the massive gatekeeper. Eh? Shimo-kun, where are you off to? Jin called, curious. Official business, Shimo said, waving a hand dismissively as he vanished through the Shirodo gate. Jin's smile only deepened as he watched him go. What a puzzling man, truly beyond prediction. As Aizen's subordinate, Jin had seen plenty of reports on Shimo, but every new piece of intelligence only deepened the mystery. He wasn't just strong. He was unpredictable. Perhaps, Jin mused, he's the real wild card in all this. Well, Jin said with a soft chuckle, my job's done. Time to enjoy the show. His half-lidded eyes flashed with an icy blue glint. Outside the gate, Shimo looked up at Jidanbo. Lower the Hakudaman gate. Yes, Lieutenant Shimo. The giant bowed deeply, lowering the gate with both hands until it thudded into place like a fortress wall. Thank you, sir, Jidanbo said earnestly. If not for you. No need to thank me. Shimo's tone was calm. Just remember your duty. That's enough. The gatekeeper watched as Shimo's figure receded into the distance, heading westward toward the outskirts of Rakangai. Western Rakangai, Shiba residence. By the time Shimo arrived, the once quiet estate had transformed overnight. The distinct Shiba architectural flair had returned, open courtyards, reinforced walls, and a hidden underground space large enough to house a small fortress. From afar, the structure resembled 2 colossal arms bursting from the ground. A sculpture bearing Shiba Kaien's name stood proudly at the entrance, symbol of the current clan head. As Shimo approached, 2 familiar figures dropped down from above, Jinpaku and Kinpaku, the Shiba household servants. Lieutenant Shimo, both said in unison, faces lighting up with recognition. Our apologies, we were repairing the roof and failed to sense your Ryatsu. No problem, Shimo said, waving it off. Is Kyoraku home? The brothers exchanged a glance and nodded. She's been in her room since you left yesterday, they said. Shimo sighed, half amused. All that just because I said no to marriage? I told her, it's too soon. The brothers chuckled sheepishly and stepped aside. Please, this way, Shimo-dano. Inside, Shimo found Shiba Kyoraku waiting, not sulking as expected, but sipping tea casually. Hey, Shimo-kun, she greeted cheerfully, not a trace of resentment in sight. You're taking it better than I thought, Shimo admitted. Still, give it a few more years before you start planning anything, all right? Kyoraku grinned. Relax. I wasn't bringing it up again. Shimo sighed, then changed topics. I came for another reason today. We're expecting visitors. The Ryoka, right, she said instantly. You told me yesterday to prepare the flower crane cannon to send them into Siriidi. Correct, Shimo replied. Though there's one more thing I forgot to mention. Her playful demeanor softened. Around him, Kyoraku always grew more composed, an instinctive respect. There's a boy among the Ryoka. Kurosaki Ichigo. He's the son of Kurosaki Isshin. Her brows furrowed. Isshin. Formerly Shiba Isshin, Shimo clarified. Kyoraku's eyes widened in disbelief. Impossible. Uncle Isshin, He fell in love with a human, Shimo said gently, turning his teacup. They had a child. That child is now one of the intruders. Kyoraku fell silent, tracing idle circles on the table with her finger. Then she nodded slowly. I see. You want me to act as if I don't know, right? A small smile curved Shimo's lips. Still sharp as ever. He looks a lot like Kaien. I'd rather not risk an emotional slip. Understood, Kyoraku said simply. Just then, the clock in the room chimed 9 times. Shimo glanced at it and chuckled. Someone's about to have a rough morning. A thunderous crash echoed from above. Pony. Break. Break. A shriek, a boom, and the unmistakable sound of impact. Sighing, Kyoraku rubbed her temples. Even if you painted 4-wheel drive on that boar, it was still a boar. Moments later, she stormed upstairs. Shiba Ganju was rubbing a bruise on his head while trying not to cry. Honestly, she scolded, punching him squarely on the top of the head. I might not be the head of the family, but as your sister, I still have authority to punish you. You're late again, consider this strike one. Ganju sniffled quietly under Shimo's amused gaze. Don't hold it in, Shimo said kindly. If it hurts, cry. No. A man doesn't cry. Ganju declared bravely, tears already welling up. Outside, Yoruichi led Ichigo's group to the Shiba estate. After climbing the long staircase, they were greeted by the sight of chaotic architecture, and by Shimo, sipping tea in the courtyard as if he owned the place. You. Ichigo stammered, nearly dropping his sword. Shimo raised his cup serenely. Calm yourself before you speak. After a few deep breaths, Ichigo managed to ask, why are you here? This, Shimo said, setting his cup down with a faint smile, is my fiancé's home. Why wouldn't I be? All eyes turned to the black cat on the floor. Yoruichi sighed, tail flicking. He's not lying. The cat leapt onto Shimo's shoulder, brushing against his cheek with a resigned look. Not that I'm happy about it, but Kakaku beat me to it. The Ryoka collectively froze, overwhelmed by the absurdity of what they were hearing. Yoruichi. You're still the same as ever. Kakaku laughed, scooping the cat off Shimo's shoulder and hugging her tightly. You always try to steal the good stuff from me. Meow, stop. I can't breathe. Yoruichi gasped, pawing frantically at her. That's the 132nd time you've nearly smothered me. All right, Kakaku laughed, setting her down. Let's talk business. You're trying to enter Siriidii, right? Ichigo nodded quickly. At least now, with Shimo distracted by cat petting, he didn't seem like a threat. The walls surrounding Siriidii, Kakaku began, are made of a special stone called Sekiseki. It cancels Ryuryoku upon contact, meaning no spiritual energy can pass through from sky to ground. She gestured proudly toward the back of the compound. To get in without authorization, you'll need the help of a fireworks master, me. Come on. I'll show you the correct way. The group followed her down a long corridor into the underground chamber. Even Shimo joined them, though Ichigo and Yuryu instinctively stiffened at his presence. It was an animal response, prey before a predator. When they reached the end, the sight before them took their breath away. A massive black cannon, towering tens of meters high, stood embedded in the rock, aimed straight at the sky. This is... Ichigo whispered. Shimo, even with all his composure, looked slightly impressed. Kakaku spread her arms dramatically and grinned. The correct way to enter the Siriidii is with this. //////. Thanks for the support. Chapter 112, Chapter 111, The Infiltrated Siriidii and the Breakout of the Senzeikyū. Jinpaku. Kinpaku. Raise it up. At Shiba Kakaku's command, the ground began to quake. The grinding of gears and the rattle of chains echoed beneath their feet, and the ceiling split apart above them. A massive circular platform rose steadily from the depths, revealing itself at ground level. Though the Shiba residents had only recently been relocated here, the construction was already no different from its former grandeur, thanks to the assistance of Kaidō. For someone like Kakaku, a genius of Kaidō and pyrotechnics, such feats were child's play. As the Ryoka group stared, still bewildered, Kakaku grabbed a handful of small metallic spheres from the launch dais and tossed them at them. Ichigo caught one, confused. What's this? Spirit Pearl Core, Kakaku explained. Channel your spiritual energy into them. Ichigo blinked. Channel, how, exactly? Kakaku's brows twitched. Don't tell me you can't even use basic Kaidō. From Shimo's shoulder, the black cat sighed. That boy doesn't have a trace of Kaidō talent. Kakaku slapped her forehead, exasperated. Ganju. Demonstrate. Her younger brother picked up a core orb and infused his spiritual energy into it. Instantly, a glowing energy barrier surrounded him, a protective layer of hardened spirit particles. Kakaku pointed proudly. Since you'll be passing through the soul shield membrane, this layer will act as a buffer. Once you have it up, you'll be fired from this flower crane cannon straight into Siriidii from the sky. I call it the Special Reishi Hardening Partitioning Generation Device. She knocked on the glowing barrier, producing a loud thud, thud. Got it. Her fiery personality burst forth completely now. The Ryoka could only nod blankly, their faces pale. Kinpaku. Jinpaku. Take them to the underground training hall and teach them how to form a proper barrier. Anyone who can't learn, she said, her grin turning devilish, gets fired out of the cannon immediately. The two giant brothers appeared behind the group without a sound. Before Ichigo could react, they grabbed him and the others in bear-like arms and charged off toward the underground training area. Once the group was gone, Kakaku sighed softly, her confident facade fading. Shimo-kun, that boy, is he truly of Shiba blood? Shimo took a slow sip from his flask of sake and raised an eyebrow. Why would you ask that? Kyoraku frowned, crossing her arms. The Shiba clan is one of the 5 great noble houses. We're known for our exceptional Kaidō mastery and abundant spiritual power. Whether from the main branch or the side families, every one of us has strong Kaidō talent, far beyond the average Shinigami. Her gaze dimmed slightly. But that boy, he has none. So tell me, is it possible my poor uncle was cheated on? Cough. Shimo nearly choked on his drink. You come up with the most ridiculous things. Kyoraku smiled teasingly. I'm just kidding. Putting away the sake, Shimo said lightly, he may lack Kaidō, but his other talents are remarkable. Give him a day, and he'll learn what he needs. Kyoraku raised an eyebrow. From 0 to mastery in 1 day. You seem oddly confident in him. Shimo only smiled. He didn't need to explain that Ichigo Kurosaki was the greatest anomaly across all 3 realms. That evening, everyone gathered for the Shiba family's traditional banquet, while Ichigo remained in the underground hall, struggling with the reishi barrier. Midway through his meal, Shimo suddenly set down his cup, his senses tingling. Looks like he did it. An instant later, a burst of overwhelming ryatsu rippled through the Shiba estate, shaking the entire building. Lady Kyoraku. The cannon's about to collapse, cried Kinpaku and Jinpaku as furniture rattled and dishes clattered to the floor. What's going on? This ryatsu, Kyoraku's eyes widened. That brat. Before she could finish, Shimo's own spiritual pressure burst forth like a tidal wave, pressing down on the surge and suppressing it within seconds. The quake ceased, calm returning as if nothing had happened. Kyoraku stared at him. Shimo-kun, what was that? He emptied his cup and replied casually, he's learned to form the barrier, but can't control his power yet. That outburst was just backlash. Moments later, Ichigo stumbled into the hall, his face pale but triumphant. Despite his exhaustion, his eyes gleamed with pride. I did it. I finished the training. Avoiding Shimo's gaze, he collapsed into a seat. Kyoraku smiled faintly. Good. Then after dinner, you're leaving. Later that night. The massive flower crane cannon stood ready, its surface glowing with spiritual lines. Ichigo, Ishida, Orihime, and Chad climbed inside, holding their core orbs tightly. Wait, Ichigo turned toward the black cat on Shimo's shoulder. Yoruichi-san, what about you? I'll take a different route, she said with a sly grin. Once you make your entrance, the chaos will draw attention. I'll slip in another way. There's another way? Ichigo asked, curious. Find a Shinigami and have them bring you in, she replied matter-of-factly. Ichigo could only sigh. Yeah, that's not happening. Enough chatter. Kyoraku slammed her fist against the cannon, activating the intricate spiraling Kaidō patterns engraved on its surface. Dawn's coming, we launch now. The 4 Ryoka focused their spiritual energy, feeding it into the orbs. Spirit particle barriers enveloped them like shimmering cocoons as the cannon roared to life. Kinpaku. Jinpaku. Prepare for the second flower crane firing formation. The 2 giants tensed, their veins bulging as Kaidō incantations flared across the ropes linking the cannon. Oh distant sky. The copper of desire seeks 36 degrees of control. 72 illusions, 13 horns. The monkey's right hand grasps the stars. Embrace the 25-fold sun, let the cradle of sand bleed. Kyoraku drew her blade and plunged it into the ground. Spiritual light burst forth, and the wrappings around her arm ignited into roaring flame. Restrain, ignite. Boom. Thunder cracked as the cannon erupted, firing a brilliant column of light skyward. The reishi projectile, containing Ichigo and his friends, soared into the heavens before vanishing beyond sight. Watching it fade, Shimo's lips curved. Siriitii, things are about to get lively. Kyoraku lowered her arm, smoke curling from the bandages. You're really not going to tell them about the landing chant? Shimo chuckled. No need. As long as they make a mess, that's all we need. The first chant will get them inside. She smiled, stepping close and looping an arm around his. Then what about us? Shimo sighed. Time for me to return to Siriitii. Will you come? Kyoraku hesitated, then shook her head. No. That useless brother of mine still needs discipline. I'm going to give him hellish training while I can. He smiled faintly. Suit yourself. Siriitii's about to descend into chaos anyway. Staying here's safer. With Yoruichi nestled in his arms, Shimo vanished in a blur of Shuinpa, crossing the distance back to Siriitii in mere minutes. Siriitii. Emergency alert. Intruders detected in Siriitii. Repeat, emergency alert. The alarms wailed across the sky. Above, the Shikanmaku, shield barrier membrane, rippled violently as 4 figures pierced through it, scattering in 3 directions. Siriitai was in chaos. From Shimo's arms, the black cat peeked out. Shimo-kun, should we go after them, Naya? He shook his head. Split up. You keep an eye on Ichigo. Don't let the idiot get himself killed. His gaze shifted toward the distant Senzakyu. I have something more important to handle. A surge of spiritual pressure pulsed from that direction, troublesome, undisciplined. Someone had started a fight. Then I'll go ahead, Yoruichi said, leaping from his arms to his shoulder before vanishing in a flicker of movement. Time for me to move too, Shimo murmured, his form fading like a mirage. Senzakyu, south of the Godei. Unlike the original timeline, Hinamori Momo had been confined directly to the repentant cell after her sentencing. The enormous white tower loomed over the highlands, its suspended bridges connecting the prison cells. Beyond it stretched the rope bridge leading toward the Sokayaku Hill, the execution grounds. Guards clad in pure white uniforms stood at every gate, their spiritual pressure sealed by design, making it impossible to gauge their strength. Captain Hitsugaya, one of them saluted sharply. I've come to visit the prisoner Hinamori Momo, Hitsugaya said calmly. Take me to the repentant cell. Within the Sekiseki-built Senzakyu, spiritual pressure was muted, no sensing, no detection. The only way to reach her was through the front. Understood. Please follow me, the guard replied. None of them knew this visit would mark the first ever breakout in Senzakyu's history. As they descended deeper, the air grew heavier. The cells were sparse, vast, eerily quiet. Hitsugaya memorized every passage and turn, just as he had on his first visit. Moments later, he stood again before the cell that held his childhood friend. Hinamori Momo sat motionless in the corner, her expression hollow. Though the day of execution was still distant, she had already lost all hope. Hinamori. Her head snapped up. Shiro. Why are you here? She asked weakly. Hitsugaya's eyes hardened. From within his sleeve, he crushed a small object in his palm. I'm here to take you out of this place. Boom. The repentant cell of the Senzakyu was breached. // Thanks for the support. Chapter 113, Chapter 112, Daiguren Hyorinmaru. The blaring of sirens echoed through the Senzakyu. At the instant the Shishinro, repentant cell, was breached, countless guards in white uniforms rushed toward the lower levels. Within moments, all of Siriitai knew there had been a prison break. 1st Division Barracks. A suffocating pressure erupted from within the captain commander's office. Siriitai has been infiltrated. The Senzakyu has been breached. The deep, commanding voice of Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni rolled through the chamber, calm yet terrifying in its weight. Sitting upright, his aged face revealed no emotion, but the air itself trembled. It seems this era is determined to test me again, he murmured coldly. Chojiro, he ordered, relay my command. 6th Division Captain Kuchiki Byakuya and 7th Division Captain Komamura Sajin, dispatch immediately to the Senzakyu. Yes, Captain Commander. With a respectful bow, Sasakaibe Chojiro vanished in a flash of Shuinpa. Direct transmission via Tentikura was deemed unsafe, the situation was too delicate. And with Siriitai's dense reishi field disrupting long-distance communication, only personal delivery could suffice. Fortunately, the barracks of the 6th and 7th Divisions were close. Within minutes, Byakuya and Komamura were on their way. Meanwhile, Hitsugaya Toshiro had already fought his way out of the prison, Hinamori Momo in tow. What puzzled him was that the further he advanced toward the exit, the weaker the resistance felt. The Sekiseki-infused walls suppressed most of his spiritual pressure, cutting his combat power by more than half. The guards could not stop him, but they delayed him significantly. Still, the defenses of the Senzakyu were nowhere near as unbreakable as he had imagined. Everything had gone too smoothly. Someone's fighting ahead. Unable to sense spiritual pressure in this place, Hitsugaya relied on sight. And then, as he closed the distance, he saw them, Izuru Kira and Renji Abarai locked in combat with a squad of guards. Kira. Renji. Both looked up, shocked. Captain Hitsugaya. Hinamori. In an instant, everything became clear. There's no time, Hitsugaya said quickly. The Godei 13 will send reinforcements, at least captain class. You two take Hinamori and get her out. I'll stay and hold them off. Renji frowned, but Kira nodded immediately. He's right. If we stay, we'll only slow him down. Go, Hitsugaya urged, ushering them toward the exit. But just as they neared the high ground bridge of the Senzakyu, Hitsugaya's body froze mid-Shuinpa. Well, came a calm, mocking voice ahead. Didn't expect you to have the guts, Shiro. At the sound, Hitsugaya's expression darkened. He recognized that voice, and the crushing spiritual pressure that followed made his blood run cold. Kyoraku Shimo. Soft, unhurried footsteps echoed down the stone corridor, each one like a toll of death. I can't say I'm surprised we'd meet again this way, Shimo said, his tone light, almost pleasant. Still, I had hoped it wouldn't come to this. He smiled faintly. 2 options. Hand over Hinamori and face the Captain Commander for judgment, or... The first one's impossible. Hitsugaya snapped before he could finish. Shimo chuckled, shaking his head. So be it. Show me, then, your strongest self. Prove your resolve. Hitsugaya stepped in front of the others, blade drawn. All of you, fall back. Now. But before he could act, 2 more immense spiritual pressure signatures appeared behind him. Those who defy law and order. A stern voice spoke. Captain Kachiki. Captain Komamura. Kira and Renji gasped. 3 captains now stood in their way. Yo, Byakuya boy, Shimo greeted casually, waving. Byakuya turned his head away, expression unreadable. He refused to acknowledge the nickname Shimo always used, Byakuya boy. He protested it many times, but it persisted. The last time he'd tried to scold Shimo about it, Unohana had appeared in his barracks, demanding a bottle of the Kachiki clan's finest sake. The timing was too coincidental. Byakuya's instincts told him Shimo had been behind it. If you don't accept it, Shimo said mildly, I might just let the entire Siri hear it tomorrow. Byakuya coughed lightly. What do you need? Just your cooperation, Shimo said with a small smile. You and Komamura handle perimeter support. Leave the fighting to me. Komamura's deep, muffled voice rumbled from behind his helmet. No objections. Shimo, of course, still insisted on calling it a wooden bucket, no matter how many times Komamura explained otherwise. All right then, Shimo said, eyes returning to Hitsugaya. It's just you and me, Shiro. If you can defeat me, you can take Hinamori and go. Hitsugaya drew higher Rinmaru, his gaze burning with defiance. I've improved a lot over the years. Shimo waved lazily. So have I, don't assume I've been standing still. Come, Hitsugaya said, his spiritual pressure surging. Sit upon the frozen heavens, higher Rinmaru. A freezing cyclone erupted around him, the air turning brittle and white. Snowflakes drifted through the dim light as the atmosphere plummeted in temperature. From afar, the storm was breathtaking, but within it, deadly. Guncho Tsurara. Ice pillars formed midair and launched like a flock of frozen spears toward Shimo. Kaidō number 4, Byakurai. Shimo raised a hand. Blue-white lightning burst from his fingertips, roaring skyward before crashing through the storm. Thunder cracked, vaporizing the hail and icicles in its path, the blast continuing straight toward Hitsugaya. The boy captain braced, swinging his blade and dispersing the lightning with sheer force, but the shockwave sent him skidding back. His face was pale. The gap between them was overwhelming. It had been over a decade since they last crossed blades, and Shimo's power had only grown more unfathomable. I'll defeat you. Hitsugaya shouted, raising his sword again. Tear through the heavens, ice dragon. A massive dragon of solid ice surged forth, roaring as it spiraled toward Shimo, its wings tearing through the storm clouds. Impressive, Komamura murmured. Even in Shirkai, his power is formidable. Truly a genius among captains. Byakuya remained silent, watching intently. The dragon lunged, yet Shimo's expression didn't change. You've improved, he said softly, but your swordplay is still crude. He extended his arm. Kaidō number 88, Hiryu Gekizoku Shinten Reiho. A column of blinding lightning erupted from his palm, twisting into a colossal dragon-shaped beam that collided with the ice construct. The resulting explosion consumed the battlefield in light. When it cleared, the ice dragon was gone, melted into vapor. Hitsugaya staggered backward, eyes wide. Impossible. 2 strikes, one to test, one full strength, and both were neutralized effortlessly, without even the use of a Zanpakutō. Not once had Shimo drawn his blade. This is Lieutenant Shimo's true strength. Komamura muttered, awe in his tone. Even I could not stand against that. Byakuya's gaze narrowed slightly. When did his power reach this level? Hitsugaya steadied his breath. Despite his frustration, his respect for Shimo remained. He knew this wasn't hatred, just opposing duties. Then I'll show you my final trump card, he said quietly. The temperature plummeted even further. Frost crept across the ground, forming crystalline patterns that spread for meters. Shimo's eyes sharpened. So you're going all out? Hitsugaya raised his sword, his voice resolute. Bankai, Daiguren Hyarinmaru. Crack. Ice blossomed across his body, encasing his right arm and shoulder. A massive pair of crystalline wings spread from his back, glimmering under the dim light. Behind him, 3 giant petals of ice rotated slowly, emanating a terrifying chill. From that frost, a new ice dragon emerged, far larger than before, its wings stretching wide as the earth itself froze beneath its aura. The ground crystallized instantly, a mirror of frozen blue. Magnificent, Shimo murmured. So this is the might of the strongest ice-type Zanpakutō. The next moment, Hitsugaya vanished. His speed skyrocketed, reappearing before Shimo in an instant, blade descending. The sword met resistance, and in a flash of cold light, Shimo was encased in a massive cross-shaped block of ice. Got him. But before Byakuya could even draw his blade to assist, the ice shattered. An overwhelming surge of spiritual pressure burst forth, scattering shards into the air like glittering snow. From the mist, Shimo walked out, completely unharmed. That was your strongest move, he said softly. Then I'm sorry. Hitsugaya gritted his teeth. I'm not done yet. Lifting his blade high, spiritual pressure surged like a blue-white pillar into the sky. The dark clouds above Siriidii began to spiral. The air froze. The world dimmed. As snow fell in blinding waves, Hitsugaya whispered his final invocation. Hayaten Hayakaso. Frozen Heaven's 100-flower funeral. / Thanks for the support. Chapter 114, Chapter 113, Shimo's Sword Technique, a new kind of snow. Snow drifted softly through the air, each flake glimmering in the cold light. The scene was breathtaking, serene, almost poetic, like a calm winter morning. But to those watching, this beauty carried only danger. Every observer present was at least lieutenant level, and all could sense the killing intent hidden beneath the snowfall. Each flake that touched the ground blossomed into a crystalline ice flower. An overwhelming chill burst forth, saturating the air with frozen spirit particles. At the center of the storm stood Shimo, completely still, as the frost crept up around him. Facing Hitsugaya Toshiro's strongest technique, Shimo didn't even attempt to dodge. Hayaten Hayakaso, the ultimate ability of Daiguren Hyarinmaru, manipulated the weather itself. When snowflakes landed upon the enemy, ice flowers would bloom upon their body, freezing them solid from within. Seeing the snow settle on Shimo's shoulders, Hitsugaya's tense expression eased slightly. I didn't think I had a chance left, he muttered, but since you're arrogant enough not to move, then prepare yourself. Bloom, ice flowers. At his command, the frost raced across the ground and surged upward, engulfing Shimo completely. Through the thickening layers of ice, Shimo's expression did not change. A faint smile curved his lips. For some reason, that smile made the young captain's heart tremble. This feeling, this foreboding. He clenched his teeth and raised Hyarinmaru once more, preparing to strike again, even though Shimo was frozen like a statue. Nearby, Kuchiki Byakuya's hand hovered over his sword hilt. His blade quivered, ready to be drawn, but he held himself back. A quiet voice within told him to trust Shimo. Even if the situation looked hopeless, he knew this man's power far too well. Kamamura's deep voice rumbled from under his helm. Lieutenant Shimo has overestimated himself. The battle is finished. Byakuya's gaze flickered but he said nothing. Cracks echoed through the air. KRRRKKK. The towering ice pillar stretched to the sky, hundreds of ice blossoms frozen mid-bloom. It pierced through the dark clouds above, scattering light across the battlefield. Hitsugaya exhaled in relief. It's over, looks like CRK. A sharp, brittle sound split the silence. Hitsugaya's pupils contracted violently. No, impossible. Someone frozen by Hayaten Hayakaso, how could they? The cracks multiplied like spiderwebs. Shards began to fall, glittering in the cold light. He quickly thrust Hyarinmaru forward, shouting. Senin Hyaro. 1,000 years ice prison. The tip of his blade pierced the massive glacier, and the surrounding moisture instantly condensed into floating shards of ice. The shards swarmed around the column, reinforcing it with layer upon layer of frozen armor. Hitsugaya intended to trap Shimo permanently, sealing him beneath countless layers of reforged ice. But then. Renji frowned. Wait, why is it snowing again? There were no clouds now, only the great pillar of ice reaching toward the sky. Yet snow began to fall once more, gentle but endless. The spectators exchanged uncertain glances. Did Hitsugaya still have Ryuryoku left? Someone murmured. Byakuya's eyes narrowed. His hand pressed down on Senbonzakura's hilt, tension in every motion. He would not stand by if Shimo truly fell here. As Shimo himself had once said, rules are broken only once, or forever. And as the current head of the Kuchiki clan, Byakuya was prepared to make that choice again. Then a sharp gasp. Renji reached out to catch a single falling flake. Warm blood splattered across the ice. Everyone, get back. Renji roared. Now. The flake had sliced open his palm. In that moment, the truth became clear. These weren't ordinary snowflakes. Blood. Kira whispered. What kind of snow is this? The air grew even colder. Each flake shimmered faintly, pulsing with restrained energy. Kamamura's heavy voice rumbled uneasily. This snow feels wrong. Byakuya's gaze sharpened, his tone low. Could it be the same technique he used to alter Senbon Sakura's release back then? He stared at the reinforced pillar. Inside, Hitsugaya's expression hardened. No movement, no ryatsu. Absolute stillness. But that sound. The faint, rhythmic cracking. It came not from within the ice, but from above. As new flakes settled upon the frozen column. Crack. The world erupted. A violent explosion of wind and spiritual energy shattered the glacier into 1,000 shards, sending a storm of frost and light into the sky. Hitsugaya stumbled backward, eyes wide in disbelief. And from within the blizzard, a voice spoke lightly. Good thing I reinforced myself with spiritual pressure, Shimo said, brushing frost from his uniform. Otherwise, that might have been troublesome. He stretched his arms and smiled. So, Shiro, what do you think? Beautiful snow, isn't it? Hitsugaya swallowed hard, lowering Hyarinmaru. What was that just now? Shimo smiled faintly. It's simple. While you cast Hayat and Hayakaso, I released a sword technique of my own. A sword technique. Hitsugaya's throat felt dry. Does it have a name? Of course. Shimo raised his hand, palm open toward the falling snow. Limitless sword, Wuji Hizetsu, boundless secret snow. Hitsugaya fell silent, the weight of defeat sinking in. He had fought with everything, his full Bankai, and still couldn't even make Shimo draw his blade fully. He managed a bitter smile. So even now, you're on another level. Do you still have any strength left? Shimo asked quietly. If not, I'll be taking Hinamori back to the Senzakyu. The guards are already on their way. Hitsugaya's shoulders sagged. He lowered his gaze, concealing the turmoil in his eyes. Byakuya appeared in a flicker of Shuinpa before Renji, Kira, and Hinamori. Release the prisoner. Return with us to face judgment. Komamura coughed softly behind his helm, trying to mask his awkwardness. He doubted Shimo from the start, and now regretted it deeply. Still, his mask, Shimo called it a wooden bucket, thankfully hid the embarrassment on his face. At Shimo's request, Byakuya and Komamura escorted Renji's group to the 1st Division for disciplinary measures. Shimo himself carried Hinamori back to the 4th deep cell of the Senzakyu. No one objected. They all knew, fighting him now would be meaningless. Let's go, Hinamori, Shimo said gently. She kept her head down, her voice hollow. Hope had long since fled her eyes. The only light she clung to now was the name Aizen. Under escort, Hinamori was returned to her cell. The repentant cell had been destroyed in the escape, and the guards suggested transferring her to another. Shimo refused. No. Take me back to the same one. The guards complied. Inside, shattered stone and charred walls bore witness to the earlier battle. Hinamori, Shimo said calmly, go inside. She obeyed wordlessly. To prevent another incident before the execution date, Shimo continued, I'll reinforce the seal myself. He raised his hand, voice resonating with power. Walls of iron sand, a priestly pagoda, glowing ironclad fireflies. Standing upright, silent to the end. Bakudo number 75, Gochuteken. 5-pillared iron weights. 5 massive columns of spiritual energy materialized, slamming down into place, sealing the chamber entirely. The overwhelming pressure in the air made even the guards tremble. Shimo-sama, this is Bakudo number 75, he said lightly. Normally it's used to restrain enemies. I simply altered its structure to serve as a wall. The principle is the same. The guards stared in disbelief. Who used Gochuteken like that? They were meant to crush enemies, not build fortresses. How are we even supposed to retrieve her for the execution? One muttered under his breath. Shimo smiled faintly. The pillars will disperse naturally on the day of sentencing. Their reishi composition simply decays slowly. The guards bowed deeply. Understood, Lieutenant Kyoraku. Thank you for your assistance. As they finished speaking, a faint chime echoed in Shimo's mind. Ding. Task complete. Reward granted. Congratulations, host, new ability acquired, shared soul barrier. Shimo's mood brightened at once. Well then, I'll take my leave. The sekiseki air here is stifling. Indeed, the oppressive reishi suppression of the prison was like breathing underwater. For ordinary Shinigami, it was suffocating. Even Shimo felt mildly constrained, though his power easily resisted it. The guards' uniforms, he suspected, were reinforced to resist the sekiseki's effects, allowing them to survive within the Senzakyu. Exiting the prison, Shimo turned his gaze northward, toward the distant Godai 13 barracks. So much Ryatsu clashing in the air. He smirked faintly, his tone almost amused. Ah, what a lively atmosphere Siriiti has become. // Thanks for the support. Chapter 115, Chapter 114, All-Out War. With the invasion of Ichigo and his group, the long-standing calm of the Siriiti was shattered in an instant. The 11th, 4th, and several other divisions of the Gotei 13 mobilized immediately at the sound of the alarms. So this is what a lively Siriiti looks like. Shimo flexed his wrist with a faint smile. Just as well, I'll go see how things are going with the 4th division. He had already noticed Ichigo's drastic change when they met at the Shiba household. The boy was like a completely different person. After Unohana stripped away the Shinigami powers Ichigo had borrowed from others and reawakened his own, his reconstituted strength became far greater, and far easier to control, especially after a brief period of intense training. Ichigo's potential had been like a sealed switch, once flipped, it burst open at once. In just 10 days, he'd risen from an ordinary seated officer's level to that of a lieutenant. As for reaching captain-class strength, that would have to wait until he mastered his Bankai. Shimo himself was curious about that. In the original timeline, Ichigo learned Bankai with the help of the Tenshintai, the changing god body. According to Unohana, he too had achieved Bankai through that device. Intrigued, Shimo once asked Unohana to lend him the Tenshintai so he could try learning Bankai as well, but it proved utterly useless for him. He couldn't even begin to manifest his Zanpakutō's spirit, let alone materialize it. After further study, Unohana concluded that Shimo's Zanpakutō contained an overwhelming and irregular power that made the Tenshintai ineffective. Though slightly disappointed, Shimo didn't mind much. He had never pinned his hopes on such shortcuts, they were, after all, too unrealistic for him. 4th Division Barracks. When Shimo arrived, he was surprised to find the place nearly deserted. Pulling aside a passing Shinigami, he learned that the 11th Division had suffered severe casualties, and most 4th Division members had been dispatched to treat their wounded. Those guys really went all out, huh? Shimo mused, tapping his chin. The Shinigami he'd stopped gave an awkward grin and said flatteringly. Mostly because the 11th Division just isn't strong enough, sir. If a lieutenant had joined the fight, they would have kept those Ryoka in their place. Shimo nodded thoughtfully. Fair point. Still, he wasn't particularly interested, this kind of vibrant Siriiti, he didn't mind it at all. If possible, he'd rather it stayed this lively for a while longer. At that moment, a group of 4th Division members hurried in carrying a stretcher. Shimo caught sight of the injured man and raised an eyebrow. Ikaku. He smirked. What, you got carried back on a stretcher now? The teasing tone made the already irritable Madarame Ikaku even more annoyed. But when he saw who was talking, he averted his bald head immediately, urging the medics to hurry him to the general treatment ward. Shimo chuckled. Perfect timing. I haven't done my inspection today, let's go together. A vein popped on Ikaku's shiny head. He had no idea how to deal with this infuriating man. TCH. Before he could finish the sound, Shimo flicked him on the head. Damn you. Shimo looked away innocently while the medics bit their lips, barely containing laughter under Ikaku's deadly glare. At the general relief ward, Unohana was nowhere to be found, likely out gathering herbs again. She had no interest in the Ryoka invasion itself, though she didn't mind healing those injured in it. Using his 4th Division privileges, Shimo arranged for Ikaku to stay in one of the best rooms, pristine white walls, a bed beside the window. Leaning casually against the wall, Shimo grinned. So, he asked, how'd you end up like this? Ikaku sighed heavily under that faintly mocking tone. How else? I got careless. Fell into a trap. Careless, huh? Shimo raised a brow. You sure it's not because you were outmatched? That jab made Ikaku's face flush red, veins throbbing on his forehead. You. Shimo peeled an orange leisurely, watching as if it were entertainment. Finally, Ikaku gave in, staring at the white ceiling. Fine. I'll admit it, that Ryoka, Kurosaki Ichigo, is damn strong. Orange-haired kid, swinging a ridiculously oversized Zanpakutō. He recounted the battle in detail, ending with a sigh. In short, the guy's a monster. Just then, a strange voice came from outside. Oh. Sounds like we found ourselves some fresh experimental material. Mayuri Kuratsuchi lifted the curtain and stepped in. Ah, Shimo-kun, fancy meeting you here. What do you want? Shimo asked flatly. Why, to learn the whereabouts of the Ryoka, of course, Mayuri said with a grin that he thought charming. They're excellent test subjects. So, Ikaku, would you kindly tell me where they are? You must be dreaming, Captain Kuratsuchi. Ikaku turned his head away, refusing even to look at him. Mayuri's smile twisted into something more dangerous. As spiritual pressure began to gather at his fingertips, a light cough interrupted him. Ahem. Need I remind you, Shimo said, that I'm the 4th Division's lieutenant. Fighting is strictly forbidden inside the ward. Mayuri clicked his tongue. TCH. Since Lieutenant Shimo insists, I'll let it slide, for now. At that very moment, the curtain was flung open again. A towering man with a spiked hairstyle strode in. You actually managed to find the 4th Division, huh? That's impressive. Say another word, Kenpachi Zaraki growled, and I'll cut you down. Same as ever, blunt and volatile. Of course, Shimo just smirked. If they ever fought again, who would cut down whom was still an open question. Kenpachi stopped beside the bed, staring at his third seat. Oi. You all right? A pink-haired head peeked from behind his shoulder. I was so worried about you, Baldy. Ikaku sighed in exasperation. Didn't I tell you to stop calling me that? Kenpachi ignored the exchange, his tone flat. I heard you got beaten. Ikaku bowed his head slightly. I'm sorry, Captain. It's shameful, but I lost. He that strong? Yeah. Very. The sunlight filtering through the window fell between the two, both expressionless as always. After a few brief questions about Ichigo's strength, Kenpachi's grin widened. Clearly, he was planning to go find and fight him himself. Shimo interjected with a smirk. If you're that eager for a fight, Kenpachi, we could always spar in the barrens again. The veins on Kenpachi's forehead bulged. Shut it, you damn pest. You know I don't enjoy one-sided fights. Ever since their last battle, Kenpachi had given up seeking Shimo as an opponent. If he couldn't win no matter what, then there was no fun in it. After learning about Ichigo, Kenpachi turned and left. If not for Ikaku's injury, he'd never have stepped foot in the 4th Division. Damn that Shimo, Kenpachi grumbled down the corridor. Always mocking people, and still stronger than everyone else. Shimo's amazing, chirped Yuichiro from his shoulder. He even gave me lots of extra candy. Kenpachi snorted. Busybody. Come on, Yuichiro, we're going to find this Kurosaki Ichigo. Back at the ward. Ikaku stared up at the ceiling again. Shimo, you think that Ryoka can survive? Shimo blinked, then smiled faintly, still chewing his orange. Why ask me that? Do you know what kind of person you look like to the average Shinigami? Ikaku asked suddenly. Now intrigued, Shimo swallowed the fruit and asked. What kind of person? Ikaku pondered before answering slowly. Strong. Mysterious. Calm but approachable, a meddler, even. Easy to get along with, but somehow distant. To the 4th Division, you're a man who can do anything. But to some of us, you also feel like a stranger. Shimo chuckled softly. That contradictory, huh? Absolutely, Ikaku said seriously. To me and Yumichika, you're different from everyone else. Perhaps he had already come to see Shimo as a friend, because Ikaku spoke openly after that, while Shimo quietly listened, patient, attentive. By the time he finished changing Ikaku's bandages, the sky outside had already darkened. All right, Ikaku. I'll head out. I'll check on you again soon. Ikaku nodded, watching him leave. On his way back to his quarters, Shimo mulled over Ikaku's words. After a long moment, he smiled faintly to himself. A fair assessment, I'd say. He was, after all, an outsider in this world, someone who knew its course, its people, their fates. That knowledge naturally colored his perspective. He approached everyone differently, depending on what he already knew of them. So even Ikaku's noticed, huh? Guess others probably have too. Still, he didn't mind. As his strength grew, so did his freedom, and in this world, power was always the truest voice. Just as he sat down in his quarters, barely warming the tatami beneath him, a shout came from outside. Lieutenant Shimo. Urgent message from the 1st Division. A captain's meeting has been called. It was Rokushima Yusuke, ever his loyal aide, appearing right on time. Shimo sighed, stood up, and stepped outside. I understand. Thank you. The moment he finished speaking, his figure vanished. 1st Division Barracks. By the time Shimo arrived at the 1st Division's hall, most captains and lieutenants were already present. Aside from those imprisoned for the jailbreak incident, and one hopelessly lost wanderer, nearly everyone was in attendance. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni leaned on his cane, eyes half closed, his expression grave. When he saw Shimo enter, he began in a low, powerful voice. The Ryoka invasion has already caused heavy losses throughout Syria. Prepare yourselves, all-out war is upon us. /////. Thanks for the support. Chapter 116, Chapter 115, the grand performance begins, the death of Tozen Kanami. Yamamoto's words immediately drew everyone's attention. Just moments ago, he announced gravely, the Godei 13 has already lost 3 lieutenants. Upon hearing this, Kyoraku Shimo's expression shifted slightly in surprise. So, Ichigo Kurosaki and his friends are really that capable. It hasn't even been that long, and they've already taken down 3 lieutenants. Yamamoto continued, his tone sharp as steel. At this point, it is no longer suitable to leave the mission to ordinary squad members. All seated officers, including lieutenants, are now permitted to carry their Zanpakutō at all times within Siri. During combat, you are authorized to release them to their full extent. He paused briefly, scanning the room. Relay this message to those who are not present. That is all, this meeting is adjourned. As Shimo made his way back, he pondered the movement of Ichigo's group. When they first invaded the Soul Society, he had seen them split into 3 groups descending from the sky. From the pressure he sensed, Ichigo was alone, a fact confirmed later by Ikaku Madarame himself. Ishida Yuryu and Inoue Orihime had paired up, the strongest and the weakest of the group in their current state. At this stage, Ichigo still hadn't mastered his Bankai. Once Yuryu activated his Quincy, predicting the outcome of their battles became difficult. As for Chad, that big guy was probably wandering through the inner districts on his own right now. If I'm not mistaken, Shimo murmured, changing direction, that one should show up near the 8th Division barracks. A smirk tugged at his lips. Let's just hope my foolish old man doesn't end up killing him by mistake. As dawn crept across the Siri, spiritual pressures flared again in violent collision. Some intruders had clearly been discovered, the battle reignited once more. The squad members fought desperately to resist the Ryoka invasion, yet due to the gap in strength, they couldn't even slow their advance. 8th Division barracks. Kyoraku Shunsui lounged lazily by the tea table, straw hat covering his face. Suddenly, he lifted the edge of his hat and blinked in mild surprise. Well, what's this? Why's the kid here in my division? Hearing this, Ise Nanao stopped writing and asked without looking up. A Ryoka. Shunsui chuckled and shook his head. Nah. Someone even more troublesome. The words had barely left his mouth when the office door burst open. Just as I thought, said Shimo, his tone dripping with disdain. Foolish old man, you really are slacking off. At that, Shunsui simply lowered his hat again over his face. Ah, come on now. I didn't mean to slack, you know. But when you've got a capable girl like Nanao here, it's only natural to let her handle the hard work, right? Capable people do more work, don't you agree, Nanao? Smack. A towering stack of paperwork crashed down onto his face, erasing any semblance of captainly dignity. Ow. Shimo burst into laughter without an ounce of sympathy. Serves you right. You always crumble under a bit of praise. Shunsui peeled the papers off his face but still didn't bother to sit up. Hey. I'm your elder, remember? Show some respect to your seniors once in a while. Stop calling me, foolish old man, every other sentence. Shimo shot him a cool glance. If you'd learn a bit from Captain Yucatake, I wouldn't have to. At the mention of Yucatake, Shunsui paused thoughtfully, then shook his head. Learn from Jushiro. No thanks. That guy works way too hard. I'd rather stay foolish, thank you. If laziness were an art, Shunsui had perfected it. Nanao continued writing without raising her head. So why are you here, Shimo? He turned toward the window, smiling faintly. Because of the big guy outside. Shunsui opened his eyes. A Ryoka, then. Shimo nodded. Yeah. I met this bunch back in the human world. For Shunsui, that was enough explanation. He didn't pry further. Then I'll leave this one to you, he said, resting his head on his arm again. He knew better than to ask too many questions. As an experienced captain, Shunsui understood when to look, and when to look away. Shimo smiled slightly and stepped out. On the street outside the 8th Division. Chad walked calmly down the road. He still couldn't control his spiritual pressure well, and could only sense danger through instinct. Footsteps echoed ahead, steady, unhurried. A chill surged through his chest, as though a giant hand had seized his heart. He swallowed hard, eyes widening as the figure came into view. Kyoraku Shimo. He remembered the gentle yet intimidating lieutenant of the 4th Division clearly, they had even shared a meal once at the Shiba household. But now, he couldn't tell whose side Shimo stood on. Yo, Chad. Shimo greeted cheerfully. We meet again, what a coincidence. Chad, as always, was silent and cautious. Hello, Mr. Shimo. Sorry, Chad, Shimo said with his usual warm smile. But your little journey in the Soul Society ends here. Chad's pupils contracted. He instinctively raised his guard. The air around Shimo shifted, his presence grew suffocating, like the depths of hell itself. Even standing before him, Chad felt as if he'd be swallowed whole. You don't even have the courage to swing, huh? Shimo remarked softly. On Chad's right arm, black and crimson patterns flared. The arm of the giant, his right arm of the giant, awoke. So this is the power of your Fullbring. Shimo studied it with intrigue. The power of Fullbringers wasn't random, it was deeply tied to the Soul King himself. Children whose mothers had been attacked by hollows during pregnancy were born with fragments of the Soul King's power, granting them the ability to manipulate souls. A remarkable amount of power, Shimo murmured. Ichigo's friends were all extraordinary in their own right, yet among them, Chad seemed the most ordinary. I'm sorry, Shimo-san, Chad said solemnly, raising his arm. But to protect my friends. I'll fight you if I must. Spiritual energy surged violently around his arm. Shimo sighed. Let's not do that, okay? If you break the 8th Division barracks, someone's going to scold me. His smile faded. Rest for a while. The world trembled. Chad's body froze, muscles seizing as Shimo's spiritual pressure crashed down like the sky itself. The overwhelming weight forced him to his knees, then down into a crater he had made with his own collapse. From above, Kyoraku Shunsui watched through the window. Oh my, what a terrifying pressure. Just how many secrets are you hiding, kid? Even Nanao looked pale with shock. She suddenly realized, the boy she had watched grow up had far surpassed her long ago. No, she thought, shaking her head. There's no way he could rival Captain Kyoraku, right? Still, the idea lingered, and it frightened her. Down below, Chad struggled desperately, veins bulging and breath shallow. Shimo looked on, admiring his will. You've got spirit, but you've already hit your limit. With a final pulse of pressure, Chad collapsed fully into unconsciousness. Shimo glanced toward the distant rooftops. He's all yours, he called to the 2 observers he'd sensed. Without another word, he vanished. He had other scenes to attend to, after all, the real performance had only just begun. There were 2 reasons Shimo had come here. First, to ensure Shunsui didn't accidentally kill Chad with excessive force. Second, to observe the Fullbring power up close. Now that both goals were achieved, it was time to move on. He stroked his chin thoughtfully. If I remember right, there's supposed to be a scheduled meeting today, but Aizen's plans have already gone off script. How's he going to spread chaos in the Siriidii now? After the Ryoka's intrusion, Aizen's every move had been aimed at deepening that chaos, making it easier to execute his plan, especially by manipulating Momo Hinamori as the emotional spark. But with Hinamori imprisoned in the nest of maggots, Aizen would need a new approach. Shimo's curiosity burned. He could hardly wait to see what Aizen would do next. Meanwhile, in the 7th Division, Tozen Kanami's unexpected visit brought great joy to Komamura Sajin, who had long been worried about his old friend. Though Tozen's face was hidden behind his visor, Komamura's heightened senses could read his emotions clearly, and lately, they'd felt off. Tozen, Komamura said warmly, removing his own mask. It's been far too long since we've had a real conversation. A faint trace of melancholy crossed Tozen's face. Yes, he said softly. A world unseen is a world filled with hatred. They spoke for hours, long into the night, before Tozen finally took his leave, returning to the 9th Division. His lieutenant, Hisei Shuhei, noticed his captain's late return but thought little of it. Tozen had already told him where he'd be. The next morning, at the scheduled division assembly, Hisei arrived punctually and began taking roll, until he froze in horror. This can't be. Atop a tall watchtower, Tozen Kanami hung lifelessly, his chest pierced clean through by a sword that pinned him to the wall. Blood streamed down, soaking the white stone below. Captain! Hisei's anguished cry echoed across the courtyard, drawing the other squad members in. They stared in stunned terror, the air itself seemed to stop. News spread swiftly. When Komamura arrived and saw his dear friend's body hanging before him, he let out a roar of grief so raw it tore through the silence. Behind his mask, the eyes of the wolf burned crimson. Captain Komamura, Hisei said hoarsely, voice trembling with suppressed fury, if I recall correctly, you spoke with Captain Tozen late into the night, didn't you? Komamura turned his blood-red gaze on him. Are you accusing me? The atmosphere froze instantly, so heavy it felt like the entire Siriidii held its breath. The curtain had risen on the next act of chaos. // Thanks for the support. Chapter 117, Chapter 116, The Proper Use of the Shared Soul Barrier. West Great Holy Wall. The atmosphere grew heavier by the second, as the rapidly escalating spiritual pressures clashed in silence. The air itself seemed to vibrate with danger. Just when the tension reached its breaking point, a commanding voice sliced through the quiet. What are you all doing? Cold yet dignified, the voice came from behind the 2 men. Guided by 2 members of the 9th Division, Byakuya Kuchiki arrived at the scene. The moment his eyes caught the two figures facing off, he immediately raised his voice to halt their actions. Wait. Byakuya's sharp gaze then shifted upward, and froze. There, hanging lifelessly from the wall of a high tower, was Tozen Kanami. His expression was blank, limbs limp, scarlet blood trailing down the pristine white stone beneath him. The scene before them painted the very picture of despair. Captain Tozen. Byakuya's pupils contracted, though he quickly suppressed his surprise. As head of the Kuchiki clan, one of the four great noble houses, he was responsible for upholding and enforcing the laws of the Soul Society. In certain situations, his authority even surpassed that of an ordinary captain. At this moment, he was the only one still thinking clearly. Both Komamura Sajin and Hisei Shuhei stood frozen, their minds overwhelmed by grief and disbelief. Byakuya spoke coldly, his tone leaving no room for argument. We will wait for the other captains to arrive. I've already sent word to summon all captains and lieutenants. 4th Division Barracks. When Shimo heard the news, his usually composed face betrayed a flicker of shock. Captain Tozen is dead. This kind of thing. He didn't finish the thought. In the next instant, his body blurred, vanishing into a flash step. As the only person in the Gotei 13 unaffected by Aizen's Kyokusui Jetsu, Shimo decided to investigate the scene himself. Back at the West Great Holy Wall, the standoff between Komamura and Hisei had only intensified. Even Byakuya, who stood guard between them, began to feel the strain. If they started fighting here, he would be forced to release his Zanpakutō completely. Several strong spiritual pressures began to converge on the scene. When Byakuya sensed a familiar one approaching, he finally exhaled softly. He's here. That should prevent this from escalating. Shimo appeared at his side, calm yet alert. What's the situation? His eyes swept across the tower, and then widened slightly. Something wasn't right. Wait. Why is Captain Tozen's body hanging from the wall? Shimo's mind sharpened. Drawing upon his unique ability, he invoked time reversal, the same technique he once used to purge Kyokusui Jetsu's illusion from himself. He expected to see a plain white wall, or perhaps a sword impaled through it. Instead, what he saw left him unsettled. Byakuya's voice broke his focus. I don't know the full details. But from what I've gathered, Lieutenant Hisei believes Komamura may have been responsible for Tozen's death. Shimo didn't respond. His gaze remained locked on the hanging figure, spiritual pressure gathering in his eyes. When his power flared, faint black lines appeared across Tozen's body, intricate, web-like patterns tracing over the skin. The lowered head, the dripping blood, it all seemed too lifelike. Shimo frowned. What is this? Why does his corpse bear spiritual circuit markings? Then, something clicked in his mind. The shared soul barrier. His eyes flashed with realization. Could this be the effect of that new ability? When he had first obtained the technique, he had tried entering his Zanpakutō's inner world through meditation. But the staircase of time within remained impassable. The ability's true nature had eluded him, until now. He hadn't expected to see its manifestation here. Though he didn't yet understand the full picture, one thing was clear, Tozen's body was not what it seemed. Shimo nodded, speaking quietly to Byakuya. Looks like we'll have to leave this one to professionals. Byakuya gave him a brief look, faintly puzzled by his composure, but didn't question him further. He trusted Shimo completely. Moments later, the captains began to arrive one after another. Once the situation was assessed, Tozen's body was carefully taken down from the tower, and the two lieutenants were separated. Komamura Sajin. I'll be watching you. Hisei's voice was cold and sharp as steel. Until the real killer is found. Komamura's voice rumbled with pain, yet his tone held unshaken conviction. I'll be waiting. Because I know I didn't do it. Their words hung in the air as Shimo considered everything he had heard. So, last night, Captain Tozen went to visit Komamura for a private conversation. Byakuya nodded, sighing. That's what they both said. But I don't know Tozen well enough to confirm whether he made a habit of such visits. He shook his head slightly. Their exchange seemed simple, nothing particularly meaningful. Shimo's mind, however, was already forming a hypothesis. Bring Captain Tozen's body to the 4th Division barracks. Captain Unohana and I will examine it ourselves. 4th Division Medical Hall. The invasion of the Ryoka had pushed the 4th Division back into chaos. Medics rushed through the corridors, wheeling stretchers and hauling medical supplies from one room to another. When Tozen's body was brought into the medical chamber, Shimo stood before the door and raised a hand. Everyone, please wait outside. Captain Unohana and I will determine the cause of death. The gathered captains exchanged glances but complied. This fell under the 4th Division's jurisdiction, after all. Shimo's eyes scanned the crowd. He noted the absence of Mayuri Kuratsuchi, which was, perhaps, for the best. Otherwise, that eccentric scientist would have caused a scene. Inside the room, Unohana Retsu was already waiting. "Let's begin," she said softly, glancing at Kotetsu Aisane beside her. What followed was not for the faint of heart. To determine the true cause of death, they had to perform a full autopsy. Over half an hour later, the room returned to its pristine state, restored effortlessly by Unohana's mastery over healing Kaidō. Shimo, who had been observing closely, now understood both the purpose of the shared soul barrier and the secret behind Tozen's body. To the naked eye, it appeared perfectly normal, but under Shimo's gaze, he saw traces of artificial tampering. And from those patterns, he knew one thing for certain. This body was created by Aizen. Only someone capable of forging the Hogyoku could possess such a level of mastery over spiritual reconstruction. Perhaps only Urahara Kasuke could match him in that domain. But why would Aizen go to such lengths? If he could already manipulate perception through Kyoka Suigetsu, wasn't that enough? What was his true goal here? Shimo frowned, deep in thought. Unohana noticed immediately. "Shimo-kun," she said gently, her voice like calm water, "is something troubling you?" Her tone washed the tension from the room. Shimo smiled faintly and shook his head. "Just thinking, what kind of power could kill a captain of the Goti I-13 without alerting anyone? Even Captain Commander Yamamoto shouldn't be able to do that." Unohana's eyes softened. No. The head captain's abilities wouldn't allow for such an incident. From the wounds, Tozen's soul link and soul core were both destroyed, and his heart suffered a fatal blow. In truth, he appears to have been assassinated. Shimo's eyes glimmered. Even Unohana didn't notice the fabrication. That makes sense. Without the shared soul barrier, I wouldn't have seen it either. He had tested the ability earlier, turning it on Unohana and Aisane, yet saw nothing unusual. Thus, he concluded that the shared soul barrier must have limits, it cannot analyze living beings. What it could do, however, was reveal the true nature of non-living constructs, like the residual spiritual energy circuits left in Aizen's imitation of Tozen's body. Shimo shook his head, dismissing further speculation for now. "Let the captains in." Moments later, the medical room filled with figures. All captains were present except Kenpachi Zaraki, still pursuing the Ryoka, Mayuri Kuratsuchi, whose whereabouts were unknown, and Yukitake Jushiro, resting in his quarters. The death of a captain had shaken the entire Siriidii to its core. The atmosphere in the room was suffocating, like the eye of a spiritual storm. Shimo's gaze found Aizen in the crowd. His expression seemed tinged with grief, but the gentle composure in his demeanor was as immaculate as ever. Shimo's eyes narrowed slightly. Unohana lowered her gaze and spoke softly. "After thorough examination, this body has been confirmed as genuine. There are no signs of substitution or forgery. Captain Tozen Kanami of the 9th Division, officially confirmed deceased." The grief that followed was palpable. No one looked more shattered than Isejai Shuhei, whose mentor had guided him through life. Tears welled at the edges of his eyes as his fists clenched tight, every muscle straining to suppress his emotions. Unohana continued gently. "From the nature of the wounds, Captain Tozen was likely killed in an ambush, by someone he trusted." The air vibrated. Hisejai's spiritual energy exploded uncontrollably, flooding the room. Eyes wide with fury, he shouted. "Komamura Sajin." Shimo's brow furrowed sharply. "This is the medical ward. Suppressing your Ryuryoku is mandatory." Hisejai hesitated, then forced his pressure back down, but the hatred in his bloodshot eyes remained. Unohana looked around, her calm restoring order. "For now, this matter will be handed over to the Central 46. Once the Ryoka affair is settled, they will decide the 9th Division's leadership." She bowed her head slightly. "Everyone, return to your posts. The battle continues." The captains dispersed one by one. As Shimo exited the infirmary, his eyes drifted south, toward the direction of the 13th Division barracks. A faint spark of orange spiritual energy flickered at the edge of his perception. He smiled faintly. "So, that's Kurosaki Ichigo's spiritual pressure, huh? /////. Thanks for the support." Chapter 118, Chapter 117, Purpose. *TL/N, sorry for those errors on this chapter lol. Was drunk when I was translating this, so I must have somehow overlapped the name of MC on the other MC from the Bleach FIC I was reading XDD. On the high ground south of the Goti I-13's barracks, before the Senzeikyū. Kenpachi Zaraki stared at the opponent before him, surprise flickering across his face. His deep, gravelly voice rumbled out. "Impossible, your bleeding actually stopped." A vicious grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Interesting." An even heavier wave of spiritual pressure erupted from Ichigo Kurosaki's body, dense enough to feel solid. He hefted the wide blade of Zangetsu onto his shoulder, his presence sharpening like a drawn sword. "Sorry about this." Boom. The The ground under Ichigo's feet exploded. He shot forward like an arrow loosed from a bowstring, streaking straight toward Kenpachi. SHNK. Zangetsu's blade carved across Kenpachi's chest. Hot blood splattered across the battlefield. Kenpachi's eyes widened for the briefest moment, then the madness returned, twisting his expression into savage delight. Ha! Now this. This is the kind of fight I want. You're finally hitting like someone worth cutting. His raised arms tensed, muscles corded. With a triumphant howl, Kenpachi brought Nozarashi crashing down. A deafening crack resounded as the two Zanpakutō collided. A violent shockwave rippled outward from their clash, scouring the ground around them. Ichigo's brows knit tightly, his expression darkened. No way. I still can't completely stop his strikes. Kenpachi's strength surged through his blade, hammering into Zangetsu. Ichigo braced, sliding backward, raising Zangetsu horizontally to absorb the blow. Ha, ha. Blood poured freely from Kenpachi's chest. Ichigo's voice dropped. Sorry, Saraki. I don't have time to drag this out any longer. I need to finish this fight quickly. Kenpachi's grin only widened into something feral. End it now. How would that be any fun? I'm enjoying this too damn much. Boom. Dust erupted around Kenpachi as massive force blasted from beneath him. If Ichigo's earlier charge had been like a fired arrow, Kenpachi, now, was like a cannonball blasting out of its barrel. A blur of pure violence. SHNK. He ducked low and shot in a straight line toward Ichigo. Zangetsu's tip skimmed across the bridge of his nose, slicing it open. The scent of blood only heightened the beastly instinct roaring inside him. Nozarashi thrust forward, aimed straight at Ichigo's face. Slash. A matching wound tore across Ichigo's cheek. Kenpachi fought with no thought for his own safety, only the thrill of carnage, making Ichigo increasingly unsettled. I'm so damn happy. Kenpachi roared, his expression twisted with ecstatic madness. How the hell are you still alive? And why are you even stronger than before? You're full of surprises, brat. Metal rang wildly as their blades clashed again and again. Blood splattered and evaporated in the scorching air between them. All I want right now, Kenpachi growled, is to enjoy this fight. For the first time in ages, he'd found the opponent he wanted. Compared to that guy from 4th Division, this orange-haired kid was absolutely adorable. Boom. Monstrous attacks tore from Nozarashi without pause. Ichigo managed to block, and even land a few counter-strikes, cutting Kenpachi again, but a strange confusion twisted his face further. Why are you this obsessed with fighting? Aren't you afraid of being cut? Of dying? Ichigo shouted his frustration. Kenpachi halted his assault and stood still. Then. Ha 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 ha. He threw his head back, covering his face with a blood-stained hand. I should be asking you. You're this strong, so why aren't you battle-crazy? Pain and death. That's just the price for having fun. When his laughter ceased, Kenpachi's expression returned to eerie calm. He murmured. So damn good. Your strength might even surpass mine. In that case, I guess I can stop holding back. Kenpachi gripped the blood-soaked hand over his face and tore off his eye patch. In that moment, a gold tidal wave of spiritual pressure erupted from him. The air quivered as the pressure turned tangible, rising skyward like a golden pillar. Meanwhile, thud. Shimo's hand pressed onto Yuichiro Kusajishi's head. Kenpachi's completely lost in the fight again, huh? Yuichiro immediately recognized the touch. I still locked on the battlefield, she replied. I can feel it. Ken-chan's really excited. It's been so long since he had this much fun. Shimo's gaze followed the clash below. But his interest wasn't in Kenpachi. It was in Ichigo's growth. This kid's rate of growth is absurd. Yuichiro tilted her head. Shimo-chan, you mean Ichi? Shimo blinked, then realized Ichi meant Ichigo. Yeah. His potential is unlike anything I've ever seen. Ichigo himself was stunned. He couldn't comprehend why Kenpachi, who had been struggling only moments ago, suddenly exploded with overwhelming power the instant the eye patch came off. Unbelievable, you were hiding strength. He gritted his teeth. What's on your right eye? Some kind of device. Kenpachi snorted. Ha. I don't care about cheap tricks like that. He lifted the eye patch. Multiple tiny eyes and a mouth lined with sharp teeth blinked and snapped. A twisted creation. This thing was made by the Shinigami Research and Development Institute. A monster that constantly devours my spiritual pressure. He tossed it aside, and slashed it in half with Nozarashi. Power exploded outward. Condensed, suppressed spiritual pressure burst forth in a violent torrent. A razor-sharp shockwave streaked across several buildings, slicing them cleanly in half. Boom. Dust swallowed the distant skyline. Kenpachi's gaze chilled. I'm doing all of this for the sole purpose of killing you. That's it. On the rooftop, Shimo watched quietly, amused. Does that lunatic ever care about the 11th Division's repair budget? If he has to pay for all this damage, he'd lose half a year's salary. Yuichiro squinted and giggled softly. It's fine. As long as Ken-chan's happy. As they spoke, the battle below reached its climax. A whirlwind of radiance burst from Kenpachi's body, forming a massive golden skull roaring in defiance. Ichigo answered with a roar of his own, unleashing all his spiritual pressure. Blue spiritual pressure surged behind him, forming the feral silhouette of a hollow mask. Both warriors raised their blades. And struck. Boom. A cataclysmic shockwave blasted outward, collapsing every nearby building. Only the rooftop beneath Shimo held firm, protected by his spiritual pressure. Shimo whistled. Forget half a year. It's an entire division's annual salary. As far as he could see, nothing but rubble remained. Ichigo and Kenpachi stood frozen. Zangetsu pierced Kenpachi's shoulder. Nozarashi carved across Ichigo's abdomen. Blood dripped freely from both wounds. And then, both collapsed. Yuichiro dropped down from the rooftop, landing beside Ichigo. He stiffened, thinking the small pink-haired girl was there to finish him off. But instead, she bowed deeply. Thank you so much. Ken-chan had so much fun thanks to you, Ichi. Then she walked over to Kenpachi. And, with her tiny frame, hefted the mountain of a man over her shoulder. Before leaving, she turned and smiled brightly at Ichigo. Let's spar again someday, okay? Please. In an instant, she vanished with Kenpachi in tow. Ichigo exhaled shakily. So she wasn't here to kill me. Soul Society is full of monsters. Thud. Steady footsteps approached. A shadow fell over him. Yo, Ichigo. Ichigo's expression twisted instantly. Talking behind people's backs. Not very polite, you know. Shimo looked down at the limp Ichigo with a smile. Why are you here? Ichigo tried to rise, but strength and Ryatsu had both fled him. Shimo waved lightly. Don't bother. I have no reason to attack you. At those words, Ichigo's body relaxed completely. And he passed out. Shimo sighed. You can stop hiding now, Yoruchi. It's time for the next step. A black cat burst from the rubble and landed on his shoulder. Let's go. I'll lead the way to Sokayaku Hill's underground chamber. Thanks, Shimo. Shimo grabbed Ichigo by the collar. And vanished. They arrived at the training ground Yoruchi had mentioned. Shimo whistled softly. You dug out an entire cavern under Sokayaku Hill. Aren't you afraid the whole place will collapse? Yoruchi leapt off his shoulder and replied. Kisuk dug it. I just use it. Shimo casually dropped Ichigo onto the floor. His head smacked the ground with a loud crack, jolting him awake. Ow. He blinked around in confusion. Wait, my wounds. He looked down, healed. He looked around, unfamiliar. Where are we? Shimo answered. Your training ground for the next 3 days. Saving Momo won't be easy. Ichigo's expression hardened as he stared at Shimo. Shimo, what are you after? He couldn't see through this man. Not his thoughts. Not his power. Shimo smiled faintly. Nothing much. Just want to shake up the stagnant Soul Society a bit. He turned to Yoruchi. Yoruchi, bring the Tenshintai. I've been looking forward to watching someone train in Bankai for a long time. Ichigo was too stunned by Shimo's words to notice anything else. Yoruchi disappeared. And returned moments later in her true human form, carrying a strange life-size doll. Ichigo's jaw dropped. Why you're? Who are you? Yoruchi's voice rumbled softly. Yoruichi. Shimo waved dismissively. Don't worry about the details. He lifted the Tenshintai with a grin. Now, let's begin your Bankai training. /////. Thanks for the support. Chapter 119, Chapter 118, Bankai, Kanjiki Ashisoji Jizo. Asterisk, P.S., reread ch 117 if you want since I already fixed the name error. Bankai. Ichigo stared at the unfamiliar word, completely puzzled. Every Zanpakutō has 2 stages of release, Shimo explained calmly. The first release is called Shurkai. The second. Bankai. To serve as a captain in the Siriitii, the minimum requirement is to be able to use Bankai. Of course, Zaraki Kenpachi, the one you just fought, is an exception. These were basic truths, and Shimo knew them well. The key point is this: the difference in power between Shurikai and Bankai varies from person to person. But even for the same Zanpakutō, the increase can be 5 to 10 times. Hearing this, Ichigo's expression instantly sharpened. Then, how do I train to achieve Bankai? Shimo placed the Tenshintai upright in front of him and explained. This thing is called the Tenshintai. Kisuke invented it. It forcibly projects the true spirit of your Zanpakutō into the real world. Ichigo's face went completely blank. He clearly didn't understand a single thing. I don't really get it, but it sounds amazing. Shimo nodded and continued. A simpler explanation: you've already met Zangetsu, haven't you? Ichigo froze, then nodded. I don't know how you figured that out, but yes. I've seen Old Man Zangetsu. Shimo smiled faintly and adjusted the Tenshintai. This will summon your Old Man Zangetsu out from your inner world. And your job is to defeat him, to make your Zanpakutō submit. Now then, stab the Tenshintai and begin your training. Before Shimo even finished speaking, Ichigo thrust his blade straight into the Tenshintai. A trembling sound rang out. The Zanpakutō in Ichigo's hand shattered into dust. A black rift in space tore open beside him. A dark silhouette emerged, flickering behind Ichigo in an instant. Looks like you've fully recovered, Ichigo. A steady voice echoed behind him. Shimo watched the scene with genuine interest. It was his first time witnessing a Zanpakutō's materialization. So this is what it looks like. This is Zangetsu, huh? Yoruichi stepped beside Shimo, chuckling. Well now, Shimo. Seeing this, are you getting jealous? As far as I know, that Tenshintai is useless for you, isn't it? Shimo sighed helplessly. Yeah, probably because my Ryatsu and Zanpakutō are far too strong. I hate to admit it, but seeing someone else's Zanpakutō take physical form, I'm a little envious. Truthfully, Shimo rarely released his Zanpakutō in combat. Simply relying on the 4 basics, Zanjutsu, Hakuda, Hoho, and Kaidō, he could already deal with almost any opponent. More than 90% of battles required no release at all. But to say Shimo didn't understand his Zanpakutō would be absurd. His daily Zanpakutō meditation had brought him ever deeper into its nature. At present, he had already climbed nearly 100,000 steps of the staircase of time inside his inner world. In my opinion, Yoruichi said softly, comforting him. That kid's potential is strong. But still not even 1/10 of yours, Shimo. Even without Bankai, you could defeat most captains anyway. Shimo smiled at that. Maybe I just need an opportunity. Could reaching the 100,000th step allow him to attain Bankai? He shook his head. He had no confidence in that at all. He had walked his Zanpakutō's inner world for so long. Yet he had never once seen the spirit of his blade. Aside from the endless staircase of time, there was only the throne of time that suppressed the entire space. Yet even after climbing 100,000 steps, he still hadn't reached it. Bankai seemed impossibly far away. But at the same time, Shimo couldn't help feeling excited. If his Shurikai was already this powerful, then what would his Bankai be? As he pondered, Ichigo and Zangetsu had already begun fighting. 2 black silhouettes flashed across the underground space. The clash of steel rang like a thunderous symphony. Boring fight. After observing for a while, Shimo finally gave his verdict. Neither Zangetsu nor Ichigo is going all out. Compared to Ichigo versus Kenpachi, this looks like children play fighting. Yoruichi asked curiously. Then what are you thinking of doing, Shimo? Shimo nodded. Ichigo's potential isn't even half awakened. He needs a much stronger fight. And with that, he vanished. A step later, he appeared between Zangetsu and Ichigo. Crack! Both of their blades were caught, effortlessly, between Shimo's pale fingers. Hold on. His voice rumbled with unquestionable authority. The intensity is far too low. At this pace, you'll never master Bankai in 3 days. Ichigo, who now trusted Shimo instinctively, asked. Then, what should I do? A dangerous smile slowly curved on Shimo's lips. Simple. A much stronger battle. Yoruichi perched on the cliff overlooking the underground space, resting her chin on her hands. After watching for a while, a bright smile appeared on her face. I have no idea what Shimo's planning. But as long as he's happy, I'm happy. In the underground arena, Shimo was clearly enjoying himself. Seeing him in good spirits, Yoruichi's mood naturally improved. The only person who wasn't happy was Ichigo. Faster. Angle upward, aim for my left shoulder. Idiot. Who told you to zone out? Ichigo realized he had made the worst mistake of his life. Agreeing to Shimo's high-intensity training. Compared to his past opponents, Shimo wasn't even the same species. Unpredictable attacks. Crushing spiritual pressure. Lightning-fast Kaidō with no incantation. Shuinpa so fast he couldn't even see them. Altogether, there was only one word to describe Shimo. Ridiculous. And the worst part? Shimo wasn't holding back at all. Light injury. Blood everywhere. Serious injury. Disemboweled. The first time Ichigo was wounded, he genuinely thought Shimo was trying to kill him. But after Shimo healed him instantly with his eerie Kaidō, Ichigo learned the cruel routine. Get injured, heal, get injured, heal. Over time, he began to wonder. Does Shimo's spiritual pressure even have a limit? Zangetsu's large sword crashed against Shimo's blade again. Huff, huff. Ichigo panted heavily. His body could heal, but his mind was nearly broken. At that moment, Shimo suddenly raised an eyebrow and looked north. That Ryatsu. A bright smile appeared on his face. Looks like something interesting is happening. All right, Ichigo. Strength surged through Shimo's arm. Boom. The ground collapsed, leaving a massive crater. Ichigo, completely unprepared, fell straight down. The force alone broke both his arms with a crisp snap. That'll be all for today. A greenish healing light burst from Shimo's hand, enveloping Ichigo. His injuries healed instantly, and he managed to climb out of the crater. Then he froze. Shimo had made this enormous crater. With a casual burst of strength. You rest for now. When your mind recovers, continue your Bankai training. Shimo turned away. I need to step out for a moment. Soft footsteps approached. Did something happen in the Gotei 13? Yoruichi asked curiously. Shimo chuckled. Just someone reaping what they sowed. Watch things here for me. Yoruichi nodded, watching him leave. Shimo trusted her strength completely. With high-speed Shuinpa, Shimo quickly left Sokayaku Hill. Gotei 13 barracks, streets. The violent spiritual pressure felt like a lighthouse in the dark. He didn't even need to sense it deliberately, the clash was obvious. By the time he arrived, the battle was already reaching its climax. A massive beam of spirit particles fell from the sky and slammed into the street, exploding violently. Dust clouded the battlefield. Yuryu Ishida descended from the air, coldly gazing into the smoke. Beg for mercy, then disappear from my sight forever. If you do that, I might spare your life. Drip, drip. Blood splattered onto the ground. The dust cleared, revealing the scene to Shimo. Mayuri Kuratsuchi's body was half destroyed, his entire left arm gone. Pathetic, a mere Quincy. Mayuri snarled. As he was about to continue. TSK. A mere Quincy almost killed you. That's embarrassingly pathetic, Mayuri. A mocking voice came from atop a nearby wall. Mayuri's remaining eye twitched with madness as he looked up. Why, you bastard. But when he saw who it was, the second half of his curse stuck in his throat. Shimo raised an eyebrow. What's wrong? Can't handle one Quincy, so now you want to attack your own allies. Mayuri's face twisted into the ugliest expression imaginable. He never expected Shimo to appear here, at this moment. Yuryu also grew wary, staring at Shimo. Don't mind me. Shimo waved casually. Continue your fight. I'm just here as an audience member. Mayuri had no way to deal with Shimo, so he poured all his fury onto his opponent. Boy. Taste my wrath. Bankai, Kanjiki Ashisoji Jaizo. Flesh writhed along Mayuri Zanpakutō, transforming disgustingly. Moments later, Kanjiki Ashisoji Jaizo appeared in its monstrous form. Seeing it, Shimo couldn't help admitting the truth. Mayuri's Bankai was the ugliest he had ever seen. A gigantic golden infant head. A centipede-like body. A red cloak draped behind it. Truly a monster. Purple poison gas erupted from its mouth. Shimo frowned. Bakudo number 81, Danku. Splitting void. A massive transparent barrier appeared in front of him, blocking the poison completely. Mayuri twirled his arms, falling into madness. Devour that boy. Countless fleshy legs thundered across the ground as Kanjiki Ashisoji Jaizo charged toward Yuryu. Faced with the terrifying sight, Yuryu instinctively glanced at Shimo. Shimo didn't move. Seeing that, Yuryu's heart steadied. He drew his bow, hand on the string, arrow aimed straight at Ashisoji Jaizo. It ends here. His voice was calm. The next moment. The arrow streaked through the air. A clean shot. / Thanks for the support. Chapter 120, Chapter 119, Hiseiji's Discovery. Boom. A blazing blue beam of spirit particles tore through the air as if ignoring the very limits of space itself. In the blink of an eye, the attack slammed straight into Kanjiki Ashisoji Jaizo. The disgusting golden infant head stood no chance. Faced with an arrow that carried all of Yuryu Ishida's remaining spiritual power, and all of his fury, it offered about as much resistance as tofu. The reishi beam punched directly through the center of its enormous skull, leaving behind a blazing blue aftertrail that stretched far down the street. Within moments, the 100-meter-long monstrosity was split cleanly in half, smoke curling up from the scorched edges of the wound. And even after completely drilling through Kanjiki Ashisoji Jaizo, the beam still had force to spare. It lanced forward, burning through hundreds more meters of street before finally fading. Watching from atop the wall, Shimo took everything in with clinical interest. Not only had Kanjiki Ashisoji Jaizo been obliterated, but its master, Mayuri Kuratsuchi, had also taken the blast full on. A gaping hole the size of a fist had been blown through his abdomen, burned black at the edges from the heat of the Quincy arrow. If one stood in front of Mayuri, they could literally see the street behind him through the wound. His blood had been seared into a hardened crust. He was barely recognizable as a living being. Wow. Now that's a sight to behold. Shimo's expression couldn't be more pleased, like a man watching a show that suddenly became interesting. Ha, ha. Mayuri gasped desperately, chest rising and falling in ragged jerks. He had never imagined he would end up in such a state. If his body hadn't undergone countless modifications, he would have been dead already. A mere Quincy. His voice trembled. Even forming words was difficult. Damn it. Suddenly, he shouted, as if burning through the last sparks of life. Shimo-kun. Yuryu stiffened. I'll make you a deal. Kill this Quincy for me, tear his soul apart, and I'll grant you 3 unconditional favors. The fear on Yuryu's face was immediate. He knew very well the monster sitting on that wall. Even in his fully awakened let's still, he had almost nothing left. His hands were trembling and cracked, covered in split skin from the force of his shots. Blood soaked his sleeves. His breathing was labored. Even at full strength, he doubted he could fight Shimo. Now. Impossible. Shimo was a threat on par with a calamity. Hey, thinking of me only now. Shimo's voice carried a lazy mockery. Sorry, Mayuri. But I won't interfere in your little scuffle. Mayuri froze. What do you mean by that? Shimo spread his hands. It means exactly what I said. A battle isn't over until someone hits the ground. Until then. I'm not stepping in. Yuryu exhaled in relief. Mayuri, on the other hand, nearly collapsed again. Ha, ha, ha. A crazed smile twisted across his face. In that case, I'll just. He raised his shattered Zanpakutō. And plunged it straight through his own neck. Squelch. A fountain of fluid spurted from his severed throat as his mangled body collapsed. Shimo leaned forward with interest. He knew exactly what trick this was. Mayuri Zanpakutō allowed him to liquefy himself after a fatal self-stab. What a shame, Quincy. The voice bubbled up from the puddle of green liquid spreading across the ground. In this state, I can't attack you. But someone like you can't harm me, either. The liquid wriggled forward, pitiful and disgusting. For the next few days, I'll stay like this. But the important thing is, I survived. A mocking laugh echoed from the ooze. Goodbye, Quincy. You live, I live, that's simply how it is. The slime oozed toward the wall. Shimo-kun. I leave that Quincy to you. And with that, Mayuri slipped through a crack in the rubble and vanished. Yuryu tried to chase. But the poison took effect. Purple blotches crawled across his skin. A weak voice came from nearby. Q Quincy, sir. Inside my left armband, there's an antidote. Nimyu Kuratsuchi, collapsed and dying, forced the words out. Yo. Shimo dropped lightly from the wall. Have you two forgotten I'm still here? Lieutenant Shimo. Though Nimyu was also a lieutenant. She knew very well. Shimo could crush Mayuri easily. Crushing her would require even less. Despite her cold personality, she was not stupid. Not by a long shot. Relax. I'm not here to silence anyone. Shimo looked to Yuryu. Drink the antidote. Then come with me. Your battle is over. Your Ryoryoku has already begun to vanish, hasn't it? Yuryu's eyes widened. Don't look at me like that. I know far more than you think. Shimo continued calmly. Your journey through the Seirei ends here. From now on, it's Kurosaki Ichigo's turn. Yuryu fell silent. Even facing the loss of his Quincy powers, he remained far calmer than most. After a long pause, he raised his head. I understand. Soon after, squads of Shinigami rushed onto the street. Kanjiki Ashisoji Jizo's destruction was impossible to miss. Lieutenant Shimo. Lieutenant Nimue. That's the Ryoka. And Captain Kuratsuchi. Where is he after releasing his Bankai? The ruined street filled with noise. Shimo lifted a hand. Take this Ryoka and Lieutenant Nimue back to 4th Division for treatment. Silence fell instantly. Then the Shinigami scrambled to obey, lifting Yuryu and Nimue and rushing away. Over recent months, rumors of Shimo's terrifying combat strength had spread everywhere. Slaying Minos. Dueling Kenpachi barehanded. Matching captains without releasing his Zanpakutō. In the hearts of many, Shimo was already a captain-class figure. 4th Division Barracks. Escorted by Shinigami, Shimo arrived with the injured. To his surprise, Chad was also there. Likely delivered earlier by Shuansui's men. Perfect. Shimo looked down at the 2 Ryoka. You 2 rest here. Heal up. Yuryu and Chad bowed their heads silently. Siriiti looked calm now. But under that surface lay chaos unheard of in 100 years. Ryoka invasion. Lieutenants defeated. Captains defeated. Toshiro Hitsugaya and 2 lieutenants having raided the Senzakyu. Tozen Kanami found dead. Hisei Shuhei openly accusing Komamura. The entire Gotei 13 was on the brink of unraveling that. This quiet was not peace. It was the silence before a storm. Night fell. Clouds smothered the moon. Siriiti was darker than usual. 9th Division Barracks. Hisei Shuhei could not accept his captain's death, not without answers. Tonight, he would search Tozen's quarters. Anger smoldered in him, but reason had not left him. Unlike the person in the original timeline who suffered the same pain, Shuhei retained clarity. As expected, Tozen's home was nearly pitch black, just like the man himself. Barely any decorations. No wasted luxuries. Shuhei searched piece by piece. Tatami mat. The low table. Wall seams. Floorboards. Wait. He froze. There's something odd here. He knelt, drew his Zanpakutō. And stabbed the floorboards. The high quality would split easily. Crack. A panel fell away. It's been cut before. The hollow beneath was empty. He lifted the plank, inspecting it under the faint light. On the underside, near the top right corner, was a small, carved arrow. What does this mean? His mind raced. He slotted the board back into place. And then he understood. The arrow points toward. Shuhei raised his head, voice cold. The 3rd Division Barracks. Meanwhile, Shimo had returned to the underground training hall beneath Sokayaku Hill. Ichigo was still battling his Zanpakutō spirit, and now held the advantage. Oh. Shimo jumped down beside Yoruichi. Looks like he's close to reaching Bankai. Yoruichi nodded. After your hell training, his combat instinct has skyrocketed. At this rate, 2 more days should be enough for him to achieve it. Boom. A blast of spiritual pressure erupted above them. Rocks rained down. Shimo snorted. Another reckless idiot. He'd already sensed who it was. I was wondering where you crawled off to. That was when Rinji Abarai landed, eyes widening at the scene. A black-clad figure with overwhelming presence turned to him. Kyoraku Shimo. Shimo-kun. Rinji's smile twisted awkwardly. That hole up there. Fix it. Shimo's tone sharpened. If it isn't exactly the same as before, I'll personally ask Byakuya to toss you into the nest of maggots. Rinji turned pale. After all, he had broken out of the 10th Division's holding cells. Being thrown into the nest was a realistic punishment. I'll fix it. Perfectly. Rinji swallowed. But, why are you here? Shimo already knew. Rinji's face darkened. I just learned, her execution was moved up. Tomorrow. At noon. Shimo raised an eyebrow. So you came to scout the place? Preparing to break in during the execution. Rinji coughed. You know how it is. Hinamori is one of my closest friends. If Rukia were still here, she'd definitely fight for her too. And you're the same, Shimo-kun. Aren't you? Shimo laughed. Don't drag me into your mess. I never said I'd save Hinamori. She broke the laws of Soul Society. Punishment is natural. Rinji froze. Then, why are you? Shimo cut him off. I'm just an innocent bystander. He shrugged. And you should know something important. The one who fought Hitsugaya and delivered Hinamori to the Senzakyu. Was me. Renji blinked, then remembered. Shimo had defeated Toshiro Hitsugaya without even releasing his Zanpakutō. Relying purely on swordsmanship and Kaidō. And then personally dragged Hinamori to the 4th cell of the Senseikyu. Don't worry. Shimo added lightly. For the near future, I won't interfere. If you want to train here, go ahead. That both relieved and terrified Renji. But he knew. If Shimo truly wanted him gone, he couldn't resist anyway. And the woman standing beside him was an unknown threat as well. I understand. Renji's voice steadied. No matter what. I can't let my friend die. He summoned the spirit of his Zanpakutō. Beginning his own Bankai training. While his potential didn't match Ichigo's, Renji's talent was still exceptional among Shinigami. To be honest, his manifested Zanpakutō is pretty ugly. After watching for a while, Shimo gave his evaluation. From his perspective, this was merely post-meal entertainment. Right. A thought struck him. He turned to Yoruichi. By the way, isn't there a barrier here? If Renji can sense Ichigo's Ryatsu, others can too. Yoruichi shook her head. So Kyoraku Hill rarely gets visitors. And also, Benihime hasn't been released here for years. In that case. Shimo lifted his head and looked upward. Let's put up an anti-detection barrier. As he chanted the Kaidō incantation, his spiritual pressure spread through the cavern. Both Ichigo and Renji stopped mid-fight. And stared in horror. Shimo's spiritual pressure was just that overpowered. Even a simple release dragged them down into an abyss they can't even fathom. // Thanks for the support. Chapter 121, Chapter 120, A Battle Between Captains. Even though this isn't the first time I've felt Shimo-san's Ryatsu. Ichigo stood frozen in place, a flicker of horror passing through his eyes. But every single time, it feels like staring into an abyss. No matter how much stronger I get, the gap only feels bigger. Renji frowned, a confused expression forming on his face. Hold on. From the way you talk, it sounds like you've known Shimo-kun for a long time. Ichigo glanced at him, answering flatly. Longer than I've known you. In the human world, he was the one who came to take Hinamori away. That was the day I first witnessed Kyoraku Shimo reveal his true power. Ichigo shook his head, his voice weakening. Even now, facing him is something I still don't have the courage for. Renji fell silent. He didn't even know what emotion to use to describe his heart right now. Since when? Since when did this world begin to feel like it was turning against him? Then he remembered, probably from the moment he crossed swords with Shimo. A spark of realization appeared in Renji's eyes. Back then, he actually thought of Shimo as someone he might catch up to someday. But now, looking at things again, even his own captain might not be able to defeat Kyoraku Shimo. And so, Renji silently lowered his target. From catch up to Shimo. To, at least reach Kuchiki Byakuya. Still distant, painfully distant. Shimo finished setting up the Kaidō barrier in moments. The moment his Ryatsu receded, he returned to his usual harmless, gentle appearance. This Kaidō barrier will block all Ryatsu detection from outside, Shimo explained. For now, no one will find you here. Hearing that, Yoruichi's eyes brightened. She stretched lazily and grinned. So that means I can leave with you, right? Shimo froze for a heartbeat, he hadn't expected that response. Yeah. That's fine. This barrier has defensive functions too. Anyone inside will be completely safe. Receiving Shimo's confirmation, Yoruichi's lips curled upward. Her golden eyes narrowed in delight. Then she looked down over the cliff at Ichigo and Renji. You brats, your training from here on is up to you. Before either of them could respond, she transformed into her black cat form and leapt onto Shimo's shoulder. Renji blinked in astonishment, he clearly had no idea who Yoruichi really was. What's with that cat? Shimo laughed lightly. Train well. I'm looking forward to seeing what you two can do. And with that, he turned and left the underground cavern, Yoruichi perched on his shoulder. Renji stared after them. That black cat, what's going on? Ichigo sighed. That black cat is Yoruichi Shihoin. Former captain of 2nd Division. Renji inhaled sharply. I feel like I just uncovered something insane. Ichigo blinked, surprised by his reaction. Why? Renji leaned closer, lowering his voice. You don't know. Lieutenant Shimo of 4th Division, his luck with women is legendary across the entire Siri. That's not even a secret anymore. Leaving the Sokayaku Hill area, Shimo began heading back toward the 4th Division with Yoruichi. But before they got far, he sensed a violent burst of spiritual pressure erupting near 3rd Division's barracks. He narrowed his eyes. What now? Yoruichi's feline pupils shrank. That Ryatsu, someone's fighting. The spiritual pressures were tangled and turbulent, even Shimo couldn't fully distinguish them. Let's go look. He accelerated instantly with Shuinpa. Yoruchi instinctively dug her claws slightly into the fabric of his shihakusho to stabilize herself. 3rd Division Barracks. Reap, Kazushini. The moment Shimo arrived, one of the clashing spiritual pressure signatures was suddenly cut apart by another. Twin spinning sides tore the air itself to shreds. The razor-sharp blades flew straight toward someone standing opposite Hisei-jai Shuhei. You do realize the punishment for raising your blade against your own captain, right? The voice carried a Kyoto accent. Cold blue light flashed in narrowed eyes. Ichimaru Jin, still wearing that eternal, unsettling smile, fixed his half-open gaze on Hisei-jai. Looks like you've prepared yourself to die tonight. He bent his knees and slid back half a step. His Zanpakutō unraveled like a silver serpent. Shoot to kill, Shinso. The blade elongated in an instant, slicing through the night air. Hisei-jai side spun in front of him, the chain pulling taut as he tried to lock Shinso in place. Jin's smile deepened, turning razor-thin. Nice idea, but you're way too slow. With a snap, Shinso shrank back to its original length. Hisei-jai's counter collapsed. He pushed forward with Shuinpa, closing the distance, aiming straight for Jin's flank. As an experienced lieutenant, he understood better than anyone how to respond to Shinso. Beat it before it fires. Jin didn't even look worried. You think you're faster than Shinso? He flickered into the air, appearing above Hisei-jai. Holding Shinso loosely, he chuckled. Rain of swords. A storm of silver blades descended like a downpour, engulfing the entire street. Boom. The explosive impact shattered the ground, turning the entire road into rubble. Dust billowed upward, swallowing everything in gray. Jin! What are you doing? A thunderous bellow shook the street. Shimo turned toward the voice. Komamura Sajin was charging in, so fast he hadn't even put on his bucket helmet. His wolf-like eyes gleamed with barely contained killing intent. Roar. Tenken. A massive armored arm materialized above, smashing directly toward Jin. Wham! Jin hadn't expected a captain's sudden assault. All he could do was raise his blade to block. The impact hurled him across the air, blood spraying from his mouth. Shimo blinked. Since when was Jin this weak? He got sent flying and dripping with blood, by Kamamura's Shurkai. Even Shimo found this unbelievable. Gasps echoed through the ruins. Captain Komamura. Isn't that a bit excessive? Jin wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, struggling to maintain composure. Komamura glared down at him, voice trembling with fury. You attacked Lieutenant Hisei-jai without authorization. Was that not excessive? Jin's eyes narrowed dangerously. You fool. Hisei-jai attacked his own captain. Am I supposed to just stand there and get stabbed? Komamura ignored him, pulling Hisei-jai from the rubble. Hisei-jai looked half dead, barely breathing. See Captain Komamura. Gathering his remaining strength, Hisei-jai forced out. Jin. Ichimaru Jin is the one who killed the captain. Kamamura's eyes widened to their limits. You summoned me here, because of this. Hisei-jai nodded weakly. He had eaten the full brunt of Jin's technique, surviving was already a miracle. Ichimaru. Jin. Kamamura's eyes turned bloodshot. With a roar of grief and rage, he swung Tenken downward. Boom. The heavy blade pulverized the street again, overturning rubble into the night sky. Dust blanketed the entire block. Jin's smile finally faded, replaced by icy malice. So that's how it is. Any flimsy excuse lets you draw your sword against a captain, huh? He gripped Shinso tightly. In that case, I won't hold back either. Shoot to kill, Shinso. Silver light tore the air, piercing straight toward Komamura. A captain-level clash erupted instantly. Scary, scary. Shimo watched the spectacle unfold, a faint smirk lifting his lips. If nothing unexpected happened, this entire mess was connected to Aizen. His guess. Shuhei must have discovered some kind of evidence. Evidence pointing directly at Jin. He confronted Jin, got crushed, and called Komamura for backup beforehand. But Hisei-jai had overestimated himself, and underestimated Jin. If Jin hadn't held back, Hisei-jai wouldn't have survived even a second. As a bystander, Shimo could see the truth clearly. The ones actually involved. Not a chance. This farce should end now. Shimo rubbed Yoruchi's feline head. Other captains are already heading this way. I'll stop the fight. Yoruchi-ne, find a safe place to hide for now. The black cat nodded, then vanished in a flicker of Shuinpa. Shimo's own form blurred and faded. Clang. A thunderous shockwave burst as two Zanpakutō collided. Jin and Komamura both flinched, a figure now stood between them. Lieutenant Shimo. Shimo-kun. Shimo's Zanpakutō stood braced between theirs, effortlessly stopping the escalating clash. Both of you. Stop. A fight between captains is punishable by severe sentencing. Komamura gritted his teeth. But Jin, this man. Shimo's voice was calm, cold, and absolute. Captain Komamura, don't let hatred blind your judgment. Even if Captain Ichimaru were the culprit, it isn't your place to pass punishment. Jin quietly sheathed Shinso, his smile slowly returning. Thank you for understanding, Shimo-kun. Shimo shrugged faintly. I'm just upholding Siriiti's laws. You don't need to thank me. And if you really are the culprit, you won't escape execution. Acting. Please. Shimo can act better than all of them. Jin's eyes narrowed, but his smile didn't break. I'm sure Central 46 will reach a fair judgment. That line alone made Shimo certain. Central 46 equals Aizen's puppets. My, how frightening. The first captain to arrive was Kyoraku Shunsui. A fight between two captains, and one nearly dead lieutenant. Shimo blinked. Ah. Right. He had forgotten something. He turned toward the rubble again. Hisagi was about 3 breaths from death. Cough, let me heal him first. Komamura shot him a wary look. Shouldn't we bring Shuhei to 4th Division instead? Shimo felt insulted. Captain Komamura. Did you forget? Shunsui coughed lightly. Shimo here is the lieutenant of 4th Division. Komamura froze. Only now realizing. Oh. Sorry, Lieutenant Shimo. It's just, your usual behavior. He struggled to find a polite word. Shimo sighed. He knew exactly what everyone thought of him. He didn't act like a healer. He acted like someone from 11th Division. Cutting hollows, cutting Shinigami. Never taking a break. People misunderstood him constantly. Shimo exhaled softly. In truth, he was a very gentle person. / Thanks for the support. Chapter 122, Chapter 121, Tradition of the Fawn Clan. Cough, cough. As the others spoke, Hisagi Shuhei spat out a good amount of blood, looking as though he was already at death's door. Let's heal him first, Shunsui said. Judging from Hisagi's condition, he's hanging by a thread. Shimo stepped in front of Hisagi. A soft emerald glow blossomed in his palm, spilling over Hisagi's head and then cascading downward until it wrapped his entire body. Under Shimo's healing Kaidō, Hisagi's condition improved with surprising speed. Yet for some reason, Shunsui couldn't shake a sense of disharmony. The emerald light spreading downward from Hisagi's head felt oddly glaring. After several minutes, Hisagi had already been pulled back from death. Breathing unevenly, Hisagi bowed. Thank you, Lieutenant Shimo. To him, Shimo, the 4th Division lieutenant who once saved him some time ago, was someone whose kindness he could never forget. Having his life saved once more only deepened Hisagi's gratitude. No need for thanks, Shimo waved him off. It was nothing. Seeing Hisagi stable, Komamura Sajin finally exhaled in relief. Hisagi was the only person who held evidence regarding his friend's death, so of course Komamura cared deeply. Moreover, he resonated strongly with Hisagi's values. A friend worth trusting, that was Komamura's impression of Hisagi Shuhei. As treatment concluded, several captains arrived on the scene. Aside from Soifan, Unohana Retsu, and Kachiki Byakuya, someone else's presence caught Shimo by surprise. Aizen had come as well. His expression was calm but tinged with worry. His gentle smile was nowhere to be seen. As a captain known for caring about his subordinates, the fact that Hinamori Momo had been imprisoned in the Shishinro had weighed heavily on him. Aizen had appealed to Yamamoto multiple times on her behalf, something hardly secret in Siriiti. What happened here? Byakuya landed before Shimo, speaking in a low voice. Shimo motioned with his chin toward Hisagi, now able to stand and walk normally. Let Hisagi explain. I'm not clear on all the details. At that, every captain turned their attention to Hisagi. He steadied his emotions and spoke in a calm, measured voice. Unable to accept my captain's death, I searched his former quarters for any possible evidence. After extensive searching, I found an arrow symbol carved beneath the floorboard. And the direction of that arrow pointed straight toward 3rd Division headquarters. His words drew varied reactions. But most captains did not immediately suspect Jin. After all, Tozen Kanami had rarely interacted with Jin. They had no conflict, no ideological rift. Jin had no motive to kill him. Oh my. A fox-like smile curled onto Jin's face. That's your evidence, he said calmly. Just an arrow. And based on that, you point fingers at a captain. And even attack him over such a flimsy notion. Hiseiji's expression didn't shift. His steady tone showed he had regained his composure. If it had been only the arrow, I might have suspected a setup. But before I could continue searching the 3rd Division grounds, I heard you with my own ears. Tozen is dead. The obstacle before us has been swept aside. Hiseiji's eyes burned with killing intent as he locked onto Jin and roared. Do you dare deny saying that? Everyone present knew Hiseiji's character well. Because of that, their gazes naturally shifted toward Jin. Jin's narrow eyes flashed with disdain. Why should I admit to your baseless accusations? This is nothing but your claim, hardly evidence. Kamamura's face darkened with anger. To confirm whether Hiseiji is telling the truth, I will keep my eyes on you in the coming days, he growled. Pray I don't find anything, otherwise I will personally bring you to justice. His thunderous voice echoed across the ruined street. Kamamura's attention was now fixed entirely on Jin. Hiseiji stood beside him, united by shared rage. Other captains exchanged uncertain glances, their eyes shifting back and forth between the two sides. I propose we detain all 3 of them first, Shunsui said. As the most senior captain present, his voice carried weight. By Siriiti law, when captains engage in internal conflict, Central 46 must judge the case. As for Captain Tozen's death, the investigators appointed by Central 46 will conduct a formal inquiry. You 3 have become unstable elements within Siriiti. His gaze swept coldly across Jin, Komamura, and Hiseiji. Regardless of the true culprit, keeping Siriiti stable is our top priority. All other captains nodded and agreed. Jin, Komamura, and Hiseiji had no grounds to object. Their battle had already demolished several streets. There were no casualties, but the damage to the Godai 13 grounds was severe. And so, this matter reached a temporary pause. Yet although the surface had calmed, Siriiti's waters only grew more turbulent. The mud at the bottom of the pond had been completely stirred. The already murky currents were now cloudier than ever. Those with sharp intuition could feel the growing tension pressing over Siriiti. When word of the confrontation between Jin and Hiseiji reached 1st Division, Captain Commander Yamamoto issued his orders. 3rd Division Captain Ichimaru Jin. 7th Division Captain Komamura Sajin. 9th Division Lieutenant Hiseiji Shuhei. For violating Siriiti regulations, all 3 were to be confined within their respective division holding cells. No one was permitted to leave without Yamamoto's direct approval. 8th Division Captain Kyoraku Shunsui would oversee the entire matter. Honestly. Shunsui sighed bitterly. How did things end up like this? It was clear Yamamoto trusted his disciple greatly. Shunsui might appear unreliable most days, but when it came to actual work, he was far more dependable than most captains. Shimo shot him an irritated look. And you dare complain? This was your assignment, why did you drag me along? Shunsui gave a sheepish smile. Well. I was worried Captain Ichimaru might not behave. And if he tried to run, I wouldn't be able to stop him alone. Hearing their exchange, Jin suddenly turned his head, walking in front of them. No need for such worries, Captain Kyoraku, he said lightly. I never admitted Captain Tozen's death had anything to do with me. As an innocent man caught in this mess, I trust Central 46 will make the correct judgment. Shuansui's eyes flickered. From his tone, could he really be uninvolved, he wondered. Shimo, however, wasn't thinking about that at all. Tozen Kanami's death had little to do with Jin. After all, Tozen wasn't dead. Most likely, he was with Central 46 right this very moment, issuing secret directives. Aizen and Jin were here in Siriiti. Tozen had died. Yet the edicts from Central 46 continued to flow without pause. Execution dates had even been repeatedly pushed forward. Shimo glanced at the paling sky. The dawn light was faint. Just a few hours left. Then Shunsui turned toward the small, cold-eyed figure near Shimo. By the way, Captain Soifan. He scratched his head. Why are you getting involved in all this? Soifan's face remained expressionless, her tone cold and clipped, no different from usual. I have a question I need to ask someone. Shunsui raised an eyebrow, eyes shifting suspiciously between her and Shimo. His expression gradually shifted into something bordering on scandalized. Ahem. Captain Soifan, Shunsui cleared his throat. There's something you should know. While noble marriages aren't forbidden, our Shimo here already has a fiancé. Before he finished, Soifan's eyes flashed with irritation. Please leave. Shunsui quickened his pace immediately, pushing Jin ahead of him. As he passed Shimo, he whispered. Shimo. The Kyoraku family doesn't have a one-wife tradition. Reviving the clan falls on your shoulders. Before Soifan could unsheath her Zanpakutō, Shunsui practically fled the scene with Jin in tow. Shimo rubbed his forehead helplessly. That foolish old man. Some habits were truly unchangeable. Turning to Soifan, Shimo sighed. So, what did you want to ask me this time? Facing Shimo, Soifan's demeanor shifted ever so slightly, almost embarrassed. Especially after someone had just exposed her inclinations. Even so, once Shimo asked, her expression steadied. Her eyes carried a complicated depth. Shimo. I hope you won't hide this from me. Has Lady Yoruichi returned to Soul Society? Shimo blinked in surprise. Yes. Yoruichi Shihoin has returned to Soul Society, he admitted. How did you figure it out? In the faint morning light, Soifan's eyes trembled slightly with suppressed emotion. Her idol, her master, had defected 100 years ago. That betrayal had always been a thorn in her heart. Now that she knew Yoruichi was back, she needed answers. She needed to ask that question face to face. Why did you choose to abandon us? It was simple, Soifan said. She stepped close to Shimo, rising slightly onto her toes to inspect his shoulder. There are several black cat hairs on your uniform. Shimo stared at her, speechless. What kind of deduction is that? Just how obsessed with Yoruichi are you, that you can identify her cat hairs on sight? Unbelievable, Shimo muttered, rubbing his temples. Soifan turned away, speaking softly. Shimo. When Siriitii settles down, I hope you'll come to the Fawn clan. With that, she vanished using Shuinpa, disappearing before Shimo could reply. Watching her retreating form, Shimo murmured. Was she running away? No sooner had he spoken than he felt a small weight land on his shoulder. Oi, little Shimo, a familiar voice purred. I'll explain it to you. The black cat, Yoruichi, balanced easily on his shoulder, her golden eyes watching Soifan's departure with mixed emotion. The Fawn clan is a branch family under the Shihoin clan. Their role is to protect the Shihoin line. And for a Fawn woman to marry someone. Her tail flicked. She must first pass the Fawn clan's traditional examination. /////. Thanks for the support. Chapter 123, Chapter 122, The War Between Yoruichi and Unohana. What do you mean by that? Shimo blinked, genuinely surprised. The Fawn clan has that many rules. The black cat, Yoruichi, sighed deeply. Oh, come on, little Shimo. The Fawn clan may be a lower noble house, but they've served the Shihoin family for generations. By the time it reached Soifan's generation, she's already the 9th successor. Hearing that, Shimo recalled what he knew about Soifan. As the youngest daughter of the 9th generation, her 5 older brothers had all died on missions. How many members of the Fawn clan were even left was uncertain. Yoruichi glanced at Shimo, clearly reading the thoughts in his head. Only a handful of Fawn clan members remain. Far fewer than other noble families. Most of the survivors are no longer able to serve on missions. Although Soifan inherited the title from her mother, she has not yet become head of the clan. Yoruichi's whiskers brushed against Shimo's cheek as she leaned in. Before I left Soul Society, her grandmother was still the clan head. So yes, some traditions must still be followed. Shimo let out an unimpressed huff. Oh, the rotten aristocratic system. Yoruichi froze for a moment, then narrowed her eyes. Hey, coming from you, a high-ranking noble. That's pretty rich. Shimo scooped the black cat off his shoulder and held her lightly in his arms. I've run into those same problems when I was preparing to inherit the Kyoraku household. He briefly recounted those memories to Yoruichi. The elders, half of them already half asleep in their graves, doubted my strength. They opposed my succession to the Kyoraku family. Shimo curled his lip. If I weren't strong enough, the family would have been drowning in political waves. Yoruichi fell silent. She understood all too well. In the Shihoin family, strength and talent were everything. Enough about that. Shimo shook off the topic. Let's get back to 4th Division. I need to prepare. It's almost time to head to Sokayaku Hill. Executions in just a few hours. Today's show is going to be the best part. I can't miss it. Yoruichi meowed approvingly from his arms. And then, Shimo vanished. 4th Division Barracks, General Relief Ward. Ishida Yuryu stared in terror at the massive figure before him, towering, scarred, menacing to the point of inducing panic. Excuse me. Crack. Zaraki Kenpachi rested his Zanpakutō on his shoulder, a cruel grin stretching across his face. You kids are Kurosaki Ichigo's friends, right? Ishida and the others exchanged startled looks. Well, yes. There was no point hiding it. Ryoka were comrades by default. In that case, Kenpachi said, excitement in his eyes. Following you will definitely lead me to Ichigo. His mind moved surprisingly fast, but his methods were utterly incomprehensible. Let's go. We're leaving 4th Division. His voice trembled with anticipation. I'm going to fight that kid. Yachiru Kusajishi popped her head over Kenpachi's shoulder. Hey. If you're leaving 4th Division, at least say bye to the lieutenant. A voice came from the doorway. Oh. You again. Kenpachi scowled at Shimo, clearly harboring grudges. He looked away like a sulking child. We're leaving 4th Division. Satisfied now? He sounded like someone being forced to study Kaidō. Shimo nodded, smiling. Of course. Safe travels. Ishida and the others stared blankly. We're Ryoka. We're invading Siriitii. You're just letting us go. Kenpachi's expression darkened as he stomped out. Thanks, Shimo. Yachiru waved politely as she followed. Shimo turned to the still-frozen Ryoka. Well. Planning to stay for dinner? Or are you going? They panicked and scrambled after Kenpachi. We'll meet at Sokayaku Hill, Shimo. Shimo nodded and watched them leave. Yoruchi lazily rested on his shoulder. Letting them go like that. Siriitii is going to explode again. Shimo chuckled. A chaotic Siriitii makes things easier. At that moment. Shimo-kun. Unohana lifted the door curtain and entered. Her gaze immediately chilled at the sight of the black cat on Shimo's shoulder. Yoruchi Shihoin. Clearly, she knew exactly who this was. Shimo coughed, trying to hide his embarrassment. Ahem, she's a friend. Yoruchi's golden eyes narrowed, a dangerous gleam flashing. Captain Unohana, you seem hostile toward me. Women's intuition was sharper than any blade. Sometimes, sharper than Sherlock Holmes. Of course. Unohana's voice remained gentle, yet carried an unmistakable, chilling dominance. Because Shimo is the only one who can please me. How could I possibly let you have him? The normally serene Unohana was now openly forceful. Yoruchi smirked and rubbed her head against Shimo's cheek. Oh. That's not something you decide with words alone. Right, little Shimo. Despite knowing Unohana's true identity as the first Kenpachi, Yoruchi did not retreat even half a step. Retreat now, and she would lose the advantage forever. Unohana's smile remained serene, but her eyes glinted like a blade. Under Shimo's stunned gaze, she stepped forward and wrapped her arm around his free arm, pulling it into her embrace. Soft warmth pressed against him. Shimo froze, completely unprepared. The woman and the cat locked eyes, neither backing down. See, Captain. Kotetsu Aisen's voice echoed from outside. The execution is about to begin. She lifted the curtain. And her worldview shattered instantly. This. Though her combat skills were average, her survival instincts were top tier. Sorry. I saw nothing. She vanished with Shuinpa before anyone could speak. Shimo exhaled heavily. Should we head to Sokayaku Hill? Unohana hesitated, then gently released his arm. Every division must send someone to witness the execution. But 4th Division is overwhelmed with patients. I cannot leave. So this task falls to you, Shimo-kun. She faced him directly, her expression softening. Just as Shimo wondered whether Unohana might do something shocking. She simply reached out and smoothed the wrinkles on his shihakusho. Her voice was warm and quiet. I'll be waiting for your safe return. For the first time. Yoruchi visibly froze. Danger. A terrifying enemy. Only now did she realize, her true rival was not Shiba Kakaku. It was the woman before her. Captain Unohana Retsu. Since Kotetsu Aisen could barely speak to him without blushing now, Shimo decided to go alone to represent 4th Division. As he stepped outside, a familiar system chime sounded in his mind. New check-in mission issued. Sign in at Sokayaku Hill and kill Tozen Kanami in the most spectacular, shocking way possible. Reward, supreme spiritual pressure. Shimo's eyes lit up. That reward was unmistakably tied to breaking through to the next stage of his time-based ability. This is going to be a big one. No matter how strong Tozen was. Shimo was stronger. Meanwhile, Sokayaku Hill. Shimo felt two spiritual pressure signatures clashing. From the direction of the Shishinro. So those two finally started fighting. He smiled, this would be entertaining. On the high ground, Repentance Cell. I'll surpass you, Captain Kachiki. Renji Abarai roared, releasing his Ryatsu. Howl. Zabi Maru. His Shirkai erupted, red light flaring as the segmented bone serpent wrapped around him, glaring at Kachiki Byakuya. Renji's shihakusho morphed, brown fur covering one shoulder and arm, mismatched on the other side. You've mastered it. Byakuya's usually calm eyes flickered with surprise. He knew Renji's abilities well. This sudden growth was unexpected. Captain, this is my final request. Renji's voice trembled with determination. Let me through. I have to save my friend. Byakuya's voice remained cool. Even if one who violated Soul Society's law is saved, what difference does it make? No more pointless words. Renji's fighting spirit surged. His real goal wasn't just saving someone. He wanted to defeat his captain. Compared to the original story, Renji here was far less obsessed. Hinamori was simply a friend. With your strength, you cannot lay a finger on me. Byakuya's confidence never wavered. Renji roared and swung Zabimaru, the bone serpent smashing through stone with explosive force. Scatter, Senbenzakura. Byakuya flash-stepped into the air, avoiding the wild attacks as pink blades glittered around him. Towers collapsed. The earth split open. 6th Division's demolition crew was officially in action. Meanwhile, Shimo watched from afar. Only 6th Division could afford to fight like this. Anyone else would be paying it off for decades. Yoruichi tracked Byakuya's movements with her eyes. He's improving fast. His Shuinpa is almost on my level. Shimo nodded. Renji's good, but still lacking. Just as he finished, Renji was bound midair by Bakudo number 61, Rikuchikoro. Byakuya's voice was calm. Bankai. Senbenzakura Kageyoshi. Pink shadows spread. A tidal wave of cherry blossoms blade roared forward. / Thanks for the support. Chapter 124, Chapter 123, A Twisted Turn of Events. Senbenzakura slipped from Byakuya's hand the moment his calm words fell, the blade's tip pointing straight down. It sank into the ground without resistance, the ripples around it vanishing like water swallowing a stone. A wave-like surge of spiritual pressure spread from the place where the blade disappeared, and in the next instant, towering blades rose from the earth on both sides of Byakuya, forming the unmistakable silhouette of his Bankai. Pretty sure this is the first time I've actually seen Byakuya's Bankai up close. Shimo's eyes gleamed with a hint of envy. Honestly, it looks amazing. On Shimo's shoulder, Yoruichi's golden cat eyes twitched with helpless annoyance. That's all you have to say about a Bankai this powerful? Amazing. Why does it feel like you're somehow mocking him? Still, Yoruichi knew better than anyone, Shimo calling something amazing was already high praise. Under Byakuya's command, the massive blades broke apart with a thunderous bloom, erupting into countless glittering cherry blossom fragments that scattered through the sky. It's over, Renji. His voice carried no emotion, calm, merciless. A single petal grazed Renji's cheek. His eyes widened in horror. Boom. The structure behind him exploded into debris under the assault of the blossoms. The moment the rubble fell, Renji's wounds detonated with it. SSHHHT, SSHHHT, SSHHHT. Dozens of gashes burst open all at once, blood spraying like fountains. Zabimaru, too, shattered instantly under the impact of the petals. Renji dropped to his knees, lifeless, his eyes empty. What a spectacular fight. Shimo landed lightly from a broken rooftop and walked toward Byakuya. You again, Byakuya said with a sigh. His ethereal, icy persona never worked on Shimo. Not even a little. Yo, little Byakuya. Yoruichi waved a paw at him. Yoruichi Shihoin. Byakuya's expression instantly sharpened. How did you return to the Siriidii? This was the first time he'd seen her since her disappearance. Relax, Shimo said. I brought Yoruichi back. I'll explain later. He pointed at Renji lying half dead on the ground. If you don't heal him now, 6th Division will be hiring a new lieutenant. The vein on Byakuya's forehead throbbed. A perfectly good lieutenant, yet this idiot insisted on breaking into the Senzeikyū. Shimo vouched for him once, and Renji used that chance to attempt another jailbreak. One stupid decision after another. He nearly ruined his entire future. Renji. Shimo knelt down, placing a hand on Renji's head. A soft green glow spread from his palm. You can't judge everything with your eyes alone. Shimo genuinely appreciated Renji. For all his rough edges, he had the virtues of a righteous man. You need to learn how to see with your heart. Renji blinked in confusion, then his gaze softened into contemplation. See, with my heart. Even Byakuya frowned, pondering the meaning behind Shimo's words. All right, treatment's done. Shimo rose. Most of Renji's wounds had already closed. Byakuya's Bankai was not meant to kill him, after all. Renji was a useful lieutenant, and he hadn't actually committed a crime worthy of true execution. And even Byakuya, champion of Soul Society's laws, believed the Central 40 SIX's judgment this time was excessive. Giving spiritual pressure to a human wasn't unprecedented in Soul Society's history. Those Shinigami received exile or imprisonment, not execution. But Hinamori had been sentenced to the Sokayaku, a punishment meant for the gravest of criminals. Using a cannon to kill a mosquito, ridiculous didn't even begin to describe it. Renji, you've already lost to Byakuin here today, Shimo said firmly. Your fight ends now. If I see you interfering again at Sokayaku Hill. He smiled, a gentle smile that somehow sent a chill crawling through Renji's bones. The consequences won't be as light as a few serious injuries. Byakuya's brow twitched, not at the threat, but because Shimo had once again called him Byakuin in front of his own lieutenant. He forced his expression calm, swallowing his irritation for the sake of dignity. Renji shivered. That cold sensation. It was the same type of terror he felt when he watched Shimo battle Hitsugaya. The cold seeped from his feet all the way to his skull. Gulp. He swallowed hard. Facing Byakuya, he could muster courage. Facing Shimo. Impossible. The gap was too large, unmeasurable. I understand. Shimo smiled. Don't worry. Momo won't die. Renji looked surprised. But, Shimo silently added, her fate afterward might be worse than death. Real despair was not endless darkness. It was being shown light, only to be thrown back into the abyss. That was Hinamori's destiny. Come on. Let's head to Sokayaku Hill. Shimo looked toward the towering cliff to the south. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the Siriidii, Zaraki Kenpachi suddenly stopped, surprised to see someone standing in his path. Kenpachi. Why are you walking around with Ryoka? Kyoraku Shunsui's voice carried a faint chill. He remembered clearly, he'd sent Chad to 4th Division. So why were the Ryoka now walking beside Kenpachi? Have you sided with the Ryoka as well? Kenpachi rested his Zanpakutō on his shoulder, grinning savagely. Ha! I don't give a damn whose side anyone's on. I only care about fighting. And since you're in the way of my next battle, sorry, Shunsui. He pointed his sword at Shunsui. Fight, or die. Shunsui sighed loudly. So Shimo was right. You really are a beast that acts purely on instinct. And at a time like this, shouldn't you be explaining why the Ryoka are with you? Kenpachi tilted his head. Huh. Why bother explaining anything? As long as I get to fight, that's all that matters. Before Shunsui could respond, Kenpachi lunged. You idiot, I only wanted to ask how Shimo was doing. Shunsui had assumed Shimo was in danger when he saw the Ryoka. He only wanted an update. Instead he was dragged into a fight. Ha. I'll tell you after we're done fighting. Kenpachi's combat instincts sharpened, much higher than normal. He knew that if he explained first, Shunsui would walk away. Then who would he fight? So, fight first. Talk later. Their blades clashed, spiritual pressure shockwaves blasting down the streets. On the road to Sokayaku Hill, Shimo stopped mid-step, a troubled expression crossing his face. Why is that dumb old man fighting Kenpachi? Everything was going off script. The chain of events he remembered from the original timeline was shattering. With Tozen's death, the entire sequence had derailed. He steadied his breath. This means I can't rely on memory anymore. Sokayaku Hill. When Shimo finally arrived, only a handful of captains were present. 1st Division, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni and Sasakaibe Chojiro. 2nd Division, Soifan and Omida Marekio. 7th Division, Komamura Sajin and Iba Tetsuzeman. And surprisingly, Aizen Sosuke stood near the execution platform, silently watching Hinamori Momo. Other captains were absent, either caught in battles on the way, or imprisoned due to earlier incidents. Hitsugaya, for example, after killing 39 guards during his infiltration, had already been locked up under 1st Division surveillance. Ichimaru Jin, thanks to Hiseiji's accusation, was monitored and unable to leave 3rd Division. 4th Division's Captain Unohana was overwhelmed by wounded patients. So Shimo came to represent the division. All eyes turned toward him once he stepped onto the hill. Lieutenant Kyoraku Shimo. Yamamoto's voice boomed across the stone. Why have you brought a former criminal to Sokayaku Hill? His fiery gaze locked onto the black cat on Shimo's shoulder. Now, Commander General. Yoruchi drawled lazily. Are you certain the Central 40 SIX's judgment back then was correct? There's nothing wrong with upholding Soul Society's rules. She flicked her tail. But what if the rules themselves were wrong? Silence pressed over the hill. Yamamoto lowered his staff slightly. Old as I am, I will not believe Soul Society's laws were mistaken. Your actions back then trampled justice underfoot. His spiritual pressure surged like an all-consuming inferno. The air itself trembled. The title, Strongest Shinigami, was no exaggeration. Yoruichi waved a paw dismissively. All right. I'm only here to catch up with Soifan. Once the execution is done, I'll report to First Division. Yamamoto's spiritual pressure flared even hotter. I will vouch for her. Shimo cut in. Yamamoto paused. Very well. I will let this matter go, for now. Among the entire Gotei 13, Shimo's record was immaculate. Unmatched talent, flawless performance, noble pedigree. A future pillar of Soul Society. With Shimo taking responsibility, Yamamoto relented. Soifan's gaze, however, never left the black cat. Her feelings toward Yoruichi were far too complicated. Yoruichi felt the killing intent and her fur bristled involuntarily. Time passed. Soon, it was time. Yamamoto stepped forward and struck the ground with his staff. Prepare to release the Sokayaku. A thunderous shockwave spread across the hill. The execution was about to begin. / Thanks for the support. Chapter 125, Chapter 124, All Creation, Reduced to Ashes. As the final word left his mouth, the coiling ropes wrapped around the massive execution spear unraveled, spinning loose in the air. The spiritual pressure sealed within it erupted all at once. Freed from its bindings, the colossal spear tilted forward, falling under its own weight. Tangible, oppressive Ryatsu rippled around the spear like distorted waves, pressing heavily upon everyone gathered at Sokayaku Hill. Standing atop the execution scaffold, Hinamori Momo trembled, her expression filled with utter despair. The stone restraints beneath her feet separated into floating slabs, clamping onto her limbs and slowly lifting her toward the sky. Sokayaku, released. A golden phoenix materialized high above, its enormous form rigid and emotionless, cold avian eyes locking directly onto Hinamori. Sokayaku, the executioner. Yamamoto Genryusai's calm, unshifting voice echoed across the hill. The Sokayaku spear reveals its true form. As the executor of the gravest criminals, once it pierces the sinner, the execution ends. All the captains fixed their gazes on the golden phoenix, on the executioner itself. Its radiant wings unfurled, covering all of Sokayaku Hill. The sheer magnitude of its spiritual pressure even surpassed that of an ordinary captain-level Shinigami. Shimo narrowed his eyes, observing the massive phoenix above. 1,000,000 sword worth of destructive power. Really? He felt nothing but skepticism. Even ignoring the exaggerated spiritual pressure, just the fact that Ichigo Kurosaki had blocked it in canon already proved this 1,000,000 sword claim was basically a bedtime story. Well, according to legend, usually means it's nonsense anyway. Shimo muttered dryly. Yamamoto paused, coughed lightly, and gave Shimo a sharp look. Ahem. Regardless of its power, the Sokayaku is the symbol of Soul Society's law. Shimo nodded politely. Because in the next moment, Soul Society's law was about to be trampled into dust. The phoenix let out a piercing cry. Flames surged violently around its body as it locked once more onto Hinamori. Facing death, she was far less calm than she imagined she could be. Despair swallowed her entire gaze. Boom. Just as the phoenix lunged, a Zanpakutō slammed down in front of its beak. A deafening explosion cracked the sky. Ichigo. Everyone turned in shock. Who is that? He blocked it. The Sokayaku's impact, said to equal 1,000,000 sword, was stopped by one sword. A Ryoka. Komamura Sajin's voice rumbled, now steady and carrying renewed authority. Since his true face had already been seen, he no longer bothered hiding it. Showing his real form only added to his imposing presence. I didn't expect a Ryoka to actually make it here. Though unfortunately, the Sokayaku's full might is not something he can block twice. He made no move to interfere. Because the only person who mattered, Yamamoto, was watching. The phoenix withdrew into the air, its crimson wings beating once before it locked onto Ichigo and Hinamori again. Preparing for a second strike. Ichigo tightened his grip, bracing himself. Then. Senin Hyero. 1,000-year ice prison. A chilling voice rang from above. Crack. Massive pillars of ice plummeted from the sky, instantly engulfing the phoenix. The golden phoenix froze completely in an instant, immobilized midair. The cloud cover parted. Hitsugaya Toshiro descended from the sky. Hitsugaya. Even Yamamoto couldn't hide his surprise. What of third seat Genshiro? Hitsugaya grit his teeth, forcing his ice to hold. He's fine. I only knocked him out. Yamamoto nodded. Then I will petition to reduce your sentence. Hitsugaya exhaled shakily, then shouted down. What are you spacing out for? Destroy the scaffold and get Hinamori out of here. That snapped Ichigo back into motion. He didn't know who this white-haired kid was, but clearly, they were on the same side. Spiritual pressure surged from Zangetsu. A sky-colored wave tore downward. Boom. The entire scaffold exploded. The execution platform shattered clean through Sokayaku Hill. As Hinamori fell, another figure leapt upward and caught her mid-descent. Kira Izuru, Shimo smiled faintly. Looks like 3rd Division's jail has been breached too. Izuru said nothing. He didn't need to. Getting Hinamori away from here was the priority. Unforgivable. Yamamoto's voice thundered across the hill, ancient and crushing. Spiritual pressure roared around him like a rising inferno. The Gotei 13 requires purification. Hitsugaya finally retracted his ice. The phoenix, with no target, reverted back to the Sokayaku spear and crashed into the ground, carving out a trench dozens of meters wide. Ichigo and Hitsugaya landed together, standing between the captain-class forces and Hinamori's rescuers. We'll stop you here. Hitsugaya's eyes were firm despite the wounds he carried, likely from breaking out of custody. Ichigo glanced sideways. Hey, what's your name again? Hitsugaya froze for a moment. Hitsugaya Toshiro. 10th Division, although I won't be holding that title much longer. The Central 40 SIXS judgment awaits. Ichigo grinned. Ichigo Kurosaki, substitute Shinigami of the human world. Before they could speak further. That is enough chit-chat. Omida Marekio and Sasakabe Chojiro stepped forward. By destroying the execution platform, you have committed an unforgivable crime. Both released their Zanpakutō. But their releases barely completed before Ichigo vanished. Bam. His fist slammed into Omida's gut, launching him like a tumbling boulder. A second step flashed. Uppercut, crack. Sasakabe flew backward, unconscious. Shimo sighed into his hand. Lieutenants really are embarrassing sometimes. Even if they're holding back, this is too obvious. Beside him, Shiying. He sensed a blade being drawn. Byakuya intended to intervene. Shimo blocked him with an arm. Byakuyan, go to the underground assembly hall. Report what you've witnessed to every officer above lieutenant rank. Byakuya hesitated but obeyed and Flash stepped away. On the battlefield, Komamura stepped forward. This farce ends now. Hitsugaya, will you resist to the end? Hitsugaya clenched his jaw. Forgive me, Captain Komamura. But I cannot let you pass. The tension snapped, battle erupted. The atmosphere thickened with crushing spiritual pressure. Yamamoto slammed his cane into the ground. You dare mock the laws of Soul Society. Utter foolishness. Soifan readied herself to join. Shimo scratched the black cat on his shoulder. Yoruchi, now's your chance. Settle things with Soifan, away from this battlefield unless you want to get vaporized. Yoruchi rubbed Shimo's cheek affectionately, then Flash stepped onto Soifan's shoulder. Come with me, little bee. Beat me, and I'll let you punish me however you want. Soifan grit her teeth, but Yoruchi vanished. She immediately pursued. Shimo glanced around. He was the only one still idle. Komamura exploded with power, fighting both Hitsugaya and Ichigo simultaneously. Only Hitsugaya's exhausted state kept the balance, his Ryatsu was mostly spent. Hitsugaya, leave this one to me. Ichigo yelled. I can handle this dog, Captain. Komamura roared. I am not a dog. He smashed Ichigo skyward with a single massive punch. Shimo winced. As awe-inspiring as ever. Captain Komamura truly never disappoints. Yamamoto stepped forward. I refuse to watch this foolishness any longer. But before he could act, a figure appeared directly before him. Smiling calmly. Kyoraku Shimo. 4th Division Lieutenant Kyoraku Shimo. Even you intend to defy justice? Anger rippled in Yamamoto's eyes. The end of his long silver beard fluttered in the heat of his rising spiritual pressure. Those who betray justice shall not be forgiven. He removed his white haori and let it fall. Head Captain Yamamoto, Shimo said quietly. Your justice has rotted. Your overwhelming power has blinded you. Blind obedience to false justice only distances you further from the real thing. Yamamoto paused. I once believed you would become a pillar of Soul Society. It seems I was gravely mistaken. He tore off the top of his shihakusho, revealing a body covered in countless scars. His cane burst into flames, revealing its true form. Prepare yourself, Kyoraku Shimo. Reduce all creation to ash. Ryujin Jaka. The world ignited. Chapter 126, Chapter 125, Words of Justice. Scorching heat surged outward. The moment Yamamoto released his shurikai, all of Sokayaku Hill was instantly engulfed in a wave of blistering air. Everyone nearby was forced to feel it as well. Head Captain Yamamoto, how about we change locations? Shimo smiled casually, not a trace of tension on his face. Hearing this, Yamamoto swept his gaze around and said in a low voice. You still have the presence of mind to think of that. The words had barely fallen before he vanished with Shuinpa, leaving Sokayaku Hill behind. Shimo followed him. The two soon arrived at a more secluded area. Your actions grieve this old man, Yamamoto said, his removed Haori dancing in the wind. Why must you challenge the world's justice? His spiritual pressure was slightly weaker than moments earlier, he still wanted to persuade him. Shimo could tell. Head Captain, is that justice you believe in truly justice? Before Yamamoto could reply, Shimo continued. The so-called justice of the world. Is it just the justice of the Central 46? Or the justice defined by 40 wise men and 6 judges? Yamamoto's breathing halted for a moment. The unshakable determination on his face flickered with a hint of doubt. But you still chose to stand in opposition to justice. Shimo smiled, raising the corner of his lips. If something called justice is defined entirely by others, then that justice is not worth following. Boom. Terrifying spiritual pressure erupted across the empty plains. Facing Yamamoto Genryusai, Soul Society's strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years. Shimo had no intention of holding back. His spiritual pressure exploded outward in its entirety. At that moment, everyone in the Siriidii felt his power. Countless Shinigami looked toward the sky. As if another sky had descended upon the old one. A suffocating weight pressed upon every heart. Inside the 4th Division barracks. Unohana paused mid-treatment, turning toward Sokayaku Hill. A rare trace of worry crossed her calm and gentle face. This is Shimo-kuin's Ryatsu. On the streets of Siriidii. Kyoraku Shunsui and Zaraki Kenpachi, locked in battle, also halted their blades. Zaraki's wild grin froze slightly. He muttered. That guy. Shimo's gotten this strong. Shuinsui's expression darkened. It's not just Shimo's Ryatsu. The one he's fighting has Old Man Yama gone insane. Why would he attack Shimo? Shunsui abandoned the fight entirely, launching into Shuinpa toward Sokayaku Hill. Zaraki hesitated only a moment before following. Battle was battle, and he craved it. Ishida, Yuryu and the others stared blankly. So, what do we do now? Oriheim asked anxiously. Yuryu adjusted his glasses. To Sokayaku Hill. Ichigo is definitely there. The group followed after Zaraki. Yamamoto, sensing the overwhelming spiritual pressure crashing toward him, was genuinely surprised. You truly defy expectations, Kyoraku Shimo. Your talent may surpass even that of your senior, Shunsui. With Ryatsu this strong. A flash of realization crossed Yamamoto's eyes. Is this why you refuse to obey Central 40 SIX's justice? Shimo chuckled softly. Head Captain, I'm not someone who disregards rules. Quite the opposite, I respect rules more than most. As for today's actions, I'll give you a proper explanation afterward. Yamamoto exhaled slowly and ran his hand along Ryujin Jaka's blade. Flames roared to life. In that case, this old man must take you down. He swung Ryujin Jaka overhead. The sky itself scorched, the clouds burning away, the oldest and most powerful fire-type Zanpakutō laid bare its fangs. Shimo frowned faintly as the heat crashed over him. His spiritual pressure instinctively coated his body, blocking the worst of the flames. He knew his own limits well. Spiritual pressure could buffer the heat, but pure physical endurance. Not enough. And against Yamamoto, he could not rely on his usual durability. As Soul Society's strongest Shinigami, Yamamoto stood on a different plane entirely. Suspend the space. Akatsuki. Shimo's expression sharpened, giving Yamamoto a respectful seriousness. Void-like distortions curled around his blade. Blood-red traces pulsed along its center. The pitch-black hilt tightened beneath his grip. Compared to before, Akatsuki's released form had subtly changed. Shimo guessed it was because his spiritual pressure had grown stronger, and the Zanpakutō evolved along with it, similar to Hitsugaya's Hyarinmaru. Impressive, Yamamoto said. No wonder they call you the most gifted Shinigami of the millennium. Shimo blinked in mild surprise. No need for that look, Yamamoto said. As one who has witnessed Soul Society's long history, I speak only the truth. Shimo laughed lightly. Then thank you for the praise, Head Captain. Yamamoto raised a hand, stopping his words. I merely state facts. Begin. Show this old man the true strength behind that terrifying Ryatsu. Shimo didn't modestly decline. Then I'll start, Hitetsum, neighed Giri. A horizontal strike tore through the air, space freezing around it, aiming straight for Yamamoto's vitals. Yamamoto's eyes widened. He reacted at lightning speed, raising Ryujin Jaka. Heat wrapped around him instantly. Shimo's speed, his attack power, exceeded Yamamoto's expectations. Boom. Their blades collided with a thunderous impact, shockwaves bursting outward and extinguishing the flames that had set the planes alight. You dare use my sword style against me? Yamamoto's muscles surged, raw power coursing through Ryujin Jaka. Bold indeed, young one. He gripped Ryujin Jaka with both hands, flames surging, then unleashed the exact same technique. Hitetsum, Nadegiri. Fiery sword pressure roared toward the world, strength enough to cleave the sky. Shimo activated his ability, space congealed into a viscous mire. The blazing slash slowed, its power sinking under the stagnant gravity. Yamamoto raised a brow. His spiritual pressure exploded again. Ryujin Jaka accelerated, rushing straight toward Shimo's brow. But Shimo merely lifted his blade and blocked it. Exceptional, Yamamoto admitted. His strength increased once more. Then, flames surged upward, a whirlwind of fire erupted from the ground, a blazing tornado rising to the heavens. Everyone near Sokayaku Hill saw the sky engulfing inferno. Shunsui froze mid-step. The old man really has lost it. Two figures running through the forest, Yoruichi and Soifan, also stopped abruptly. That's the head captain's technique, Yoruichi said, face serious. This fight ends now. I'll go check the situation. I'm coming too. Soifan said immediately, anxiety flashing in her eyes. Meanwhile, a figure streaked through Siri-Idi, Unohana. Her expression was cold, eyes locked on the blazing column of fire. The tornado swallowed Shimo completely. Its range was so vast he hadn't even had time to shunpa away. Feeling the rotating inferno draw near, Shimo couldn't help admiring it. As expected of the strongest and oldest flame-type Zanpakutō. If unleashed fully, it could probably destroy all of Siri-Idi. But Yamamoto was restraining himself, mindful of the Siri-Idi's existence, releasing Shurikai only because he couldn't go Bankai here. Unfortunately for you, Shimo said calmly. Holding back makes this technique useless against me. His voice echoed from inside the flames. Yamamoto remained unmoved, and intensified the flames. The tornado tightened, compressing the space inside. Limitless sword, Wuji Hizetsu, boundless secret snow. Yamamoto's eyes widened in disbelief. Snow began falling from the scorched sky. Snow. Before Ryujin Jaka's Shurikai. His confusion was answered instantly. Each snowflake that touched the flame severed it. A blizzard of cuts sliced apart the fiery tornado. In an instant, the towering inferno vanished. Shredded cleanly. So it's a sword style. Yamamoto nodded slowly. It seems my evaluation of you must rise yet another level. Shimo emerged from the scattering embers unharmed. You flatter me, head captain. Shunsui and the others finally arrived. Just in time to witness Shimo cutting apart Yamamoto's technique. Their shock was immeasurable. Someone was matching Yamamoto, in Shurikai, blow for blow. With neither showing obvious fatigue. Old man Yama. Shunsui shouted as Yamamoto raised Ryujin Jaka again. What did Shimo even do? Is it worth going this far? Yamamoto hesitated for the briefest moment. Kyoraku Shimo obstructed my pursuit of a criminal, trampling justice underfoot. No more words, Shunsui. If you wish to block me as well, this old man will not hesitate. The head captain's overwhelming authority filled the air. Even facing everyone present, he would enforce his justice. And yet, seeing so many gathered behind Shimo, made something inside him ache faintly. Perhaps the old man was the one mistaken. Why was everyone standing on the opposite side of justice? Tension filled the air again. A clash was moments away. Until a net of spiritual pressure descended over all of Siri-Idi. Shimo recognized the signature. Bakudo number 77, Tentikura. Captains and lieutenants of the Gotei 13. Came a cold, trembling voice. This is Byakuya Kuchiki of the 6th Division. The situation is urgent. Everything I am about to say is the truth. There was something wrong with his tone. Even his spiritual pressure seemed unsteady. Central 46 has been completely slaughtered. The killer is Aizen Sosuke. // Thanks for the support. Chapter 127, Chapter 126, Aizen's Invitation. Before this. On an unremarkable street somewhere in the Rakongai. A figure sprinted desperately forward, with a smaller silhouette following closely behind. Kira Izuru's destination was West Rakongai. With captains searching for them, there was no place left within Siri-Idi where they could hide. Only by escaping could Hinamori Momo have a chance to survive. Tap. Footsteps sounded ahead of them, forcing Kira to skid to a stop mid-Shuinpa. Seeing the men who appeared before him, Kira didn't show the panic one might expect. Captain Aizen. Hinamori called out first, her voice full of relief and joy. Aizen met her gaze with his familiar gentle smile, warm, soft, like spring sunlight melting over the heart. Momo, he said softly. Are you two heading for the White Road Gate? Kira, however, still wasn't entirely convinced. Even Aizen's benevolent demeanor couldn't completely erase his doubts. Captain Aizen, are you here to stop us from leaving? Hinamori stiffened, nervous at the question. Of course not, Aizen answered, smile unchanged. I just think. With your speed, escaping from Siriitii might be too difficult. He extended his right hand toward her, inviting. Momo, come with me. I'll take you out of here. The moment Aizen spoke, Hinamori was lost. Without even a moment's hesitation, she stepped toward him. Kira opened his mouth to stop her, but froze. Because just as Aizen's hand touched Momo's, a voice sounded behind him. Well now, what a surprise, Captain Aizen. Kira's face drained of color as he saw who had appeared behind Aizen. See Captain. Jin Ichimaru narrowed his eyes and smiled. Oh. Fancy meetin' you here too, Kira. Kira stared in disbelief. Shouldn't you be locked in the 3rd Division's holding cell? Jin chuckled lightly. Ah, sorry about that, Kira. I've got more important things to do. He raised his arm, and a strip of white cloth unfurled, wrapping around him, Aizen, and Hinamori. Goodbye, Kira. The cloth dissolved, and the three vanished on the spot. Kira froze, pupils constricting. Senten Hakuja. A heavy sense of dread washed over him. As a master of Kaidō, he understood exactly what he had seen, Senten Hakuja, thousand-coil white snake, a high-level technique that transfers the user to a preset location. Whatever the destination was. It couldn't be good. Meanwhile, through Tentikura, the shocking news spread across Siriitii. The entire Central 46. Dead. What Yamamoto focused on was always the greater situation. Kyoka Suigetsu, so we were all deceived. Shunsui spoke while glancing repeatedly at Shimo. He couldn't explain why, intuition, maybe. But he felt strongly that Shimo had not been affected by Kyoka Suigetsu's hypnosis. Head Captain, looks like our fight can't continue. Shimo's tone carried a hint of regret. Yamamoto remained silent. Heart of the South, eye of the North, finger of the West, foot of the East. Soifan began incanting. Arrive with the wind and depart with the rain. Bakudo number 58, Kakushitsuijaku. A dark circular sigil formed beneath her palm. Kakushitsuijaku, a tracking technique that allows the user to locate spiritual pressure at long range. Moments later, Soifan's expression changed dramatically. Sokayaku Hill. Aizen is at Sokayaku Hill right now. Yamamoto disappeared instantly. Sokayaku Hill wasn't far for a captain moving at full speed, only minutes away. Everyone turned toward Shimo. He raised both hands helplessly. Why are you all staring at me? Go to Sokayaku Hill. Soifan and Yoruichi vanished in a flash of Shuinpa. Shunsui alone lingered, his expression, strange. Shimo, how many? Cough, what? Shimo nearly choked on his own spit. What kind of question is that? The entire Central 46 had been wiped out. And this is what Shunsui chooses to focus on. Shuansui's expression grew stranger by the second. There's one more. I'll go ahead. He disappeared. Right after he left, Unohana arrived beside Shimo. Shimo-kun, are you unharmed? Her gentle voice washed over him. Shimo exhaled and smiled. I'm fine. The head captain knows how to hold back. Only after circling him and confirming he had no injuries did Unohana relax. Shimo sighed. No need to worry. Soifan already tracked Aizen to Sokayaku Hill. Unohana nodded and looked towards Sokayaku Hill. Then let's go. They vanished. At Sokayaku Hill. Held by Aizen's guiding hand, Hinamori felt enveloped in hope. Warm, comforting, almost dreamlike. But when the white cloth fell away, a coldness more biting than death sank into her bones. Like something gnawing directly at her heart. She stared blankly. See Captain Aizen, why are we here? Aizen smiled, gentle, radiant, unchanged. Because this is where my plan continues. He lifted his head toward the group whose battle had just ended. Kurosaki Ichigo. Captain Hitsugaya. Captain Komamura. We meet again. Kamamura's face twisted from shock to fury. Criminal Aizen. Release. Bankai, Kakujo Tingen Myo. The giant manifested before him, dragging its massive blade and swinging down at Aizen with full force. Aizen didn't even move. Suzumushi Nishiki, Benihiko. A calm voice sounded behind Komamura. Blades burst forward, instantly piercing Komamura's entire body. Komamura turned in disbelief. A familiar figure sheathed his Zanpakutō. Tozen. Komamura collapsed, his huge frame hitting the ground with a thunderous crash. Even Ting and Myo vanished just before striking Aizen. Aizen nodded slightly, not surprised at all. As he had said earlier, everything followed his plan. Tozen said nothing, simply walking to Aizen's side. Ichigo's shock twisted his face. You know me. You look troubled, Aizen said kindly. He walked to Hinamori. From beginning to end, your actions have been in the palm of my hand. Urahara Kasuke's assistance. Your method of infiltrating Siri. All of it. There were small variables, yes. But overall, everything ended as intended. He leaned toward Hinamori. Isn't that right, Momo? His hand closed around her collar. To extract the foreign object inside your soul, I have prepared a very, very long time. See Captain Aizen, all this was fake, right? Aizen did not answer. His right hand, covered in eerie, bark-like patterns, plunged into her chest. He pulled out a blue-black glowing jewel. Ichigo froze. The Hogyoku. Aizen tossed Hinamori aside like a discarded doll. So small. Surprising. He slipped the Hogyoku into his robes. And her soul is intact. Urahara's craftsmanship is always impressive. But she has no further use. Aizen looked at Tozen. Tozen. Finish her. Tozen drew his blade without hesitation. Slash. Blood splattered across Hinamori's face. Hitsugaya struck from behind. Aizen raised a brow. Oh. Captain Hitsugaya still had strength left. I underestimated you. Before he could continue, massive spiritual pressure crashed down onto Sokayaku Hill. Aizen, there is nowhere left for you to run. Yoruchi and Soifan appeared, blades at Aizen's neck. Aizen remained calm. Instead he looked past them. Straight at Shimo. Shimo-kun. Would you be interested in joining us? Everyone froze. Even Shimo was momentarily stunned. Then he chuckled. Thanks for the generous offer. But I prefer the atmosphere here in Siri. Aizen smiled back. As expected. You know quite a lot. I should have been more wary of you from the beginning. Even though I patched the situation, you still managed to involve yourself in my game. Shimo raised an eyebrow. You value me that highly? Aizen chuckled softly. The moment Kyoka Suigetsu failed to affect you, I realized the severity of my mistake. Shimo's heart tightened. So the Tozen corpse was prepared specifically for me. Previously, Shimo had found the corpse suspicious, too real, too convenient. If not for the ability he gained from the shared soul barrier, he might have believed Tozen was truly dead. And miscalculated everything. Aizen's smile deepened. When, he asked. Did you begin believing I ever stopped being cautious of you? Asterisk, P.S, or a farmer strikes again. / Thanks for the support. Chapter 128, Chapter 127, Cutting Through Space. From beginning to end, I never once trusted you. Aizen spread his arms slightly, not showing the slightest tension even with blades pointed at him. From the moment you fought the original White Hollow, I had already begun to suspect you. And afterward, Barragan's death confirmed my thoughts once again. Shimo didn't interrupt. He simply listened. He was genuinely curious about Aizen's planning. Ever since he had stepped into the board, the progression of the entire game had changed drastically. Then I crushed the insects hiding in the central 40SIXS underground chamber. Aizen's smile was strangely calm. I imagine you don't object to that, do you? Yamamoto's spiritual pressure surged, he looked ready to attack. The head captain's temper remains as fiery as ever, Aizen said lightly. Just like your Zanpakutō. Shimo stepped forward, releasing his spiritual pressure to push between the two, cutting off the impending clash. And then. My original intention was to fake my own death, Aizen continued. But things went differently. Your existence was a needle stuck in my throat. He spoke leisurely. Fortunately, after some study, I created the perfect corpse puppet. Tozen's body, I doubt even you could distinguish it. His voice carried absolute confidence. Aizen never lacked faith in his own research. In the traces left behind, everything pointed toward Jin. 9th Division and 3rd Division turned against each other. All of Siri was drowning in suspicion and doubt. At this point, the entire conspiracy had been unmasked, laid bare before the eyes of everyone present. Only now did everyone finally understand everything that had happened these past days. So you're confessing because you already know you have no escape left. Yamamoto slammed his staff against the ground. A captain commander level spiritual pressure washed over Sokayaku Hill. It's over, Aizen, Shunsui said as he stepped forward. Over. Aizen's gaze remained tranquil. I don't think so. On the contrary, the real confrontation is only beginning. Everyone froze. Even now, did Aizen still have a path? Just as confusion began spreading. Yoruichi's pupils shrank first. Move, Soifan. In a flash, the two vanished from Aizen's side using Shuinpa. Shimo also sensed something. He looked up. A massive golden pillar of light descended from the sky in an instant. Aizen and the others were swallowed whole. At the same time, the clear blue sky shattered like glass. A massive crack ripped open the space. Enormous white claws emerged from the tear. Countless gigantic black-bodied, white-masked monsters forced their way out, roaring in twisted voices. What? Jillions. Every captain except Shimo blanched. How many Jillions are there? Even the Shinigami rushing towards Sokayaku Hill froze, staring in horror at the sky. A gaping black crack. A swarm of hollows screaming. A distortion that made even experienced warriors tremble. Within the golden pillar, the ground beneath Aizen, Jin, and Tozen shattered, lifting them toward the sky. Yoruichi narrowed her eyes. They're escaping after all. All the captains recognized it. No one stepped forward. They all understood, the moment the light pillar descended, they had already lost their chance to interfere. This technique was negation, a rescue beam used by hollows. Once enveloped, the barrier inside and outside became two separate worlds, completely unable to interact. Aizen lowered his gaze, looking down at everyone. His eyes finally stopped on Shimo. Shimo looked back with calm indifference. I must admit, Shimo, Aizen said, voice soft but carrying weight. Your existence brought an unexpected ripple to this rotten soul society. Unlike those stubborn fools obsessed with justice, your presence brings new possibilities to this world. You are the most troublesome element. I eagerly await our next meeting. Yamamoto's expression sharpened. So you truly intend to fall, consorting with hollows? Aizen. He had always valued Aizen as a gentle, mild-mannered subordinate. Now he realized it had all been a facade. Head captain, Aizen replied, eyes narrowing. It is you who has been too arrogant. From the very start, no one has stood upon the heavens. Not you, not I, nor even gods. However, that intolerable vacuum has come to an end. He slowly removed his glasses. Henceforth, I shall stand upon the heavens. His hand clenched lightly, his black frame shattered, dissolving into spirit particles. He swept his brown hair back. An indifferent, supreme gaze descended on all of Soul Society. From today onward, I shall stand at the summit. Everyone stared in shock. Only Shimo remained unchanged, eyes quietly observing. Aizen turned, stepping toward the dark tear in the sky. Farewell, Shinigami. Farewell, Shimo-kun. I look forward to the surprises you will bring me. Shimo's voice replied calmly. A surprise. I can give you one right now. I hope you find it satisfying. Sever the space. Akatsuki. A crushing abyss of spiritual pressure swept across Sokayaku Hill. Ka. Shimo's left thumb nudged the hilt slightly, the pressure sharpened, condensing onto the blade. Before everyone's horrified eyes, the space in front of Shimo cracked like a spiderweb. Crack. The shattering echoed above the hill. You're already dead in the eyes of Soul Society. So there is no need for you to remain alive. At these words, Aizen's head snapped around, and for the first time, a flicker of genuine shock surfaced on his composed face. Tozen. Jin's eyes opened slightly, blue irises trembling. Splat. The sound of a blade cutting flesh repeated again and again. Blood sprayed wildly inside the negation barrier. Tozen's expression filled with confusion and disbelief. Pain tore through his body. Lord Aizen. Cocklick. Akatsuki slid back into its sheath. The spiritual pressure vanished. Peace returned to Sokayaku Hill. But the minds of everyone present were in utter chaos. Tozen, he. Soifan's voice trembled. A captain, cut down with a single strike. And the most terrifying part. They were separated by an entirely different world. Not even Yamamoto could break through negation. But Shimo cut through it as if it were air. Tozen's massive body toppled backward. His spiritual pressure flickered like a dying candle. Within seconds, it disappeared completely. The 9th Division captain, Tozen Kanami, was dead. Aizen was silent for a moment, then smiled faintly. That was unexpected. I look forward to our future encounters even more, Shimo-kun. He turned without hesitation and entered the darkness. Jin lingered, his deep gaze fixed on Shimo for several seconds, then followed Aizen. The Jillians dragged the floating stone platform into the tear. The sky slowly stitched itself shut. The heavy atmosphere hanging over Siriidii remained, but Sokayaku Hill did not fall into silence. Instead, every captain wore a strange expression. Shimo's actions defied all logic. Killing a captain was shocking enough. But cutting through a different dimension to do it. And ignoring negation entirely. Even Yamamoto couldn't do that. After a long silence, Shunsui exhaled. It seems, things have settled down for the moment. Everyone understood, for the moment. Aizen and Jin leaving was merely one step in their plan. Though riddled with holes, the damage to Soul Society was immense. Still, it was stable, for now. Shunsui turned to Shimo, face complicated. He should stand with Shimo, and yet he couldn't help his curiosity. How did you cut through negation? Everyone looked at Shimo. It was the one question in everyone's mind. Shimo didn't hide it. My Zanpakutō's Shirkai ability is spatial suspension. But that's not all. He lifted his blade slightly. My Shirkai's second ability is spatial severing. Or simply, cutting space. Worlds are merely layers of space. Even if negation separates us, the space it exists in is still within my reach. He sighed lightly. It's unfortunate that Aizen's power far exceeds a normal captain. I could only hit Tozen. If he were weaker, that strike would have landed on Aizen. Everyone's expressions twisted again. Shunsui laughed dryly. No matter how he tried to rationalize it. The idea of someone cutting through a world to kill a captain was simply absurd. Thankfully, Shimo was not an enemy. Every gaze on Shimo was filled with awe and confusion. When had the lieutenant of the 4th Division become this kind of a monster? // Thanks for the support. Chapter 129, Chapter 128, The State of the Godii. Aizen's scheme had dealt a devastating blow to the Soul Society. 2 captains defected. 1 captain died. From any perspective, the damage was immeasurable. The Ryoka invasion brought with it a massive influx of wounded. The battle power of Ichigo Kurosaki and his group was overwhelming for ordinary Shinigami. Forget Ichigo, even Chad alone could defeat dozens of 11th Division members within minutes. Only seated officers and above could stand against them at all. Because of this, the 4th Division's main medical ward was bursting at the seams. And the captains weren't spared either. 1st and 2nd Division, Lieutenant Sasaki and Omida were both knocked out by a single strike from Ichigo. Their injuries were moderate. 6th Division, Lieutenant Rinji Abarai challenged by Akuya. Even after Shimo's brief treatment, Zabimaru was completely severed and had to be sent to the Shinigami Research and Development Institute for repairs. 7th Division, Captain Komamura was ambushed by Tozen and was now critically wounded, unconscious and on the brink. 9th Division, Lieutenant Hisagi Shuhei, nearly killed by Jin's Kamishini no Yari, was still in treatment. 10th Division, Captain Hitsugaya, after breaking out of jail, freezing the Sokayaku, and shielding Hinamori from Aizen's killing blow, was not doing much better. 11th Division, Captain Zaraki Kenpachi, 3rd Seat Madarame Ikaku, and 5th Seat Ayasegawa Yumichika were defeated by Ichigo and were still recovering. 12th Division, Captain Kuratsuchi Mayuri and Lieutenant Nimue were defeated by Ishida. Mayuri's injuries were severe enough that his entire body needed reconstruction. As for 3rd Division, they had essentially done nothing this entire incident. The reason? They were still stationed in the human world to prevent further hollow outbreaks. All officers of seated rank and above remained deployed. Further still, Captain Yukitake Jushiro had a relapse of illness at the worst time and was recuperating in the infirmary at Ugendo. Shimo could only feel sympathy for Yukitake's misfortune. And yet, there was someone whose condition was even worse than all others. 5th Division Lieutenant, Hinamori Momo. Aizen's meticulous manipulations had nearly destroyed her completely. Now she was like a puppet whose strings had been cut, spirit broken, expression empty, eyes lifeless. According to the specialists, she was no longer fit to serve as a lieutenant. Not even fit to serve as a Shinigami. Her friends, Kira, Rinji, and others, were worried, but after hearing the expert diagnosis, they could only accept it. For now, Hinamori was relieved of all duties and placed in the 4th Division for long-term care. When she would recover? No one could say. Thus, the 4th Division grew even more overcrowded. Meanwhile, Waco Mundo. Across a barren desert of pale cliffs and endless winds, a towering white palace rose amidst the sand. Hollows scavenged weakly around the outskirts, seeking scraps of spiritual energy, though they dared not approach the vast spiritual pressure emanating from the palace itself. Inside Las Noches, 3 figures occupied the hall. Jin Ichimaru stood silently, expression unreadable. At his feet lay the damaged corpse of Tozen Kanami. On the throne at the center, Aizen Sosuke sat calmly, gaze unreadably serene. Jin, Aizen said suddenly, breaking the silence. What do you think of Shimo? Jin paused, then answered truthfully. Strong. Strong enough to make me feel a kind of fear I can't suppress. Aizen lowered his gaze to Tozen's body. A fair assessment, he replied softly. But it ignores something else. Jin blinked, surprised. Something more important than his strength. Aizen's voice remained level. As I've said before, Shimo's greatest threat isn't his strength. It's his potential. Yamamoto Genryusai is the strongest Shinigami in Soul Society's history. But Shimo may be the greatest potential Soul Society has ever seen. Jin's eyes widened, shock finally breaking through his composure. Lord Aizen. You're comparing him directly with head Captain Yamamoto. Aizen chuckled quietly. I'm not comparing them. I'm saying that in terms of threat, Shimo surpasses Yamamoto. Back in Soul Society. With all wounded gathered in the 4th Division, Unohana Retsu and Kotetsu Aisane were overwhelmed. Unexpectedly, Shiba Kukaku adapted perfectly to the 4th Division lifestyle. After receiving multiple commendations for her contributions, Kukaku was promoted to 4th seat, right below Aisane. Her relationship with Unohana also improved drastically. She often visited the captain's quarters during breaks to discuss healing techniques and battlefield trauma care. As for the lieutenant of the 4th Division, Shimo suddenly found himself with absolutely nothing to do. He had expected a short rest period. Instead, Kyoraku Shunsui arrived and shattered the illusion. 4th Division, 6th Relief Unit Barracks. Shimo sighed as he looked at Shunsui and Nanao. So, the head captain is really in that much of a rush. I don't think this is the time for making quick decisions. Shunsui looked just as exasperated. Believe me, I agree. But when the old man hands down an order, I can't exactly throw it back. He continued. 3 divisions have no captains, 3rd, 5th, and 9th. The 5th doesn't even have a lieutenant anymore. Naturally. Certain people are being considered. Shimo interrupted calmly. You want me to choose one of those 3 divisions and take the captain's seat? Shunsui froze. How did you know? Shimo poured himself a glass of sake and finished it. Isn't it obvious? After what I displayed at Sokayaku Hill, the head captain's eyes have been different. And with 3 vacancies, I'm the only lieutenant qualified enough. Shunsui tried to reject that but realized. Shimo was absolutely correct. He coughed awkwardly. Ahem, yes, well, that's the situation. You turned down the offer to lead the 10th Division last time. This time, you won't be allowed to slip away. Nanao left behind several bottles of sake collected from the 8th Division stockpile, then followed Shunsui out. Shuansui's complaints about precious stolen sake echoed down the hall. Once alone, Shimo sat on the tatami mat and closed the door behind him. Yamamoto's intention didn't surprise him. The moment he revealed his true power, this outcome became inevitable. He considered the 3 divisions. 3rd Division, Support Division, free to move, support all units except the 4th Division. 5th Division, Rescue Division, works closely with the 4th Division, less freedom. 9th Division, Internal Affairs, protects the Siriidi, manages communications and publications. Shuansui's long romance novel The Rose-Colored Path was published under the 9th Division and had huge popularity, even among noble circles. Shimo didn't think long. He chose the 3rd Division. The reason was simple, freedom and mobility. As the Support Division, he could travel anywhere under the pretext of assisting. If he encountered any check-in tasks, he could move freely without suspicion. With his decision made, Shimo turned to the system panel. He had been anticipating the previous reward for some time. Check-in task complete, reward distributing. Congratulations, host, you have obtained limitless Ryatsu. A mechanical voice sounded. Shimo felt his body and soul beginning to transform. If his former spiritual pressure was gaseous, now it condensed into a solid state. His vast spiritual pressure volume shrank, but his strength increased steadily, like ascending a spiritual staircase one step at a time. More importantly, he sensed a transformation within his soul, similar to when he had broken through a dimension before. Is this the necessary step to surpass the Shinigami dimension? His spiritual pressure compressed little by little, reshaping itself. The process lasted half an hour. During that time, he suppressed his spiritual pressure to prevent it from affecting the surroundings. Even so, the guard outside, Rokushima Yusuke, felt a cosmic, star-like pressure crushing against him. Sweat drenched his uniform as he stood trembling, but he remained loyal and unwavering at his post. Finally, Shimo retracted his spiritual pressure. Yusuke collapsed, drenched in cold sweat. Shimo opened his eyes, a sharp gleam flashing within. It's time to challenge the 100,000th step of the staircase of time. // Thanks for the support.